sure the audio is working. All right, you're live. Let's go ahead and just do a quick audio check. Hope you can hear me okay, Philip. Awesome. Okay. Appreciate everyone's patience with us. Sorry for the trouble. Looks like I had to restart my computer, the connection between my software, streaming software, and the OBS was not working, so I just had to restart the computer, so that's been fixed, thank goodness. Just going to wait for some people to kind of trickle in a bit. Make sure that people are seeing everything okay. Hey Cheryl. Hello Philip. For those of you who are here, Philip is our official moderator for YouTube, so feel free to ask him any questions. Cheryl is also a moderator and a mentor on our Discord channel, so please go and ask her questions if you have any questions. So feel free to reach out. I will be doing the stream, so they will be manning the streams chat, so please reach out to them. First, for everyone here, please go ahead and post your profile page with us. So Philip, feel free to share your profile voice. And please, Cheryl or Cynthia, feel free to share your profiles on our page so that people can check it out. Okay, let's make sure the audio works. All right, I'll also share my profile as well so people can see it. 1 second, I'll go over that. And then also I'll be putting in the Discord stream link. If anybody here can put in the Discord stream or the Discord link, that would be great. We want our users to sign up with our Discord. I'm just going to quickly go to my profile and I'll share that link so people can see it. Okay. Go ahead and share my profile link. Oh, good. Awesome. Cheryl, don't be afraid to share your profile, and don't forget to share your profile as well. Cynthia, if you'd like to, so people can check out all of our works. And for those of you who don't know, today is going to be another terrain stream. It's terrain streams all month. The last one I think was water or fantasy battle maps, and today it's going to be fantasy world. Next month, most likely, I'll be taking all the different biomes that we made in these little squares here, and we're going to apply some actual structures there. So that will include like villages, settlements, stuff like that. So that will be next month, and then I'll also try to fit in a couple streams on filters. Notice that a lot of people users don't use filters, and I would highly suggest that people do use filters, as that is how you create the various styles and stuff that you want to create. So definitely use filters. They're located right here for the filter tool, and I'll make sure to do a stream on that. So for those of you who don't know, you can download, clone, and edit this particular template that I'm using, and I'll make sure to go ahead and grab that real quick and put that in the description. Well, actually, it's in the description of the video, so I don't have to put it in the chat, so just look in the description for that. Okay. Oh, no one else shared their stuff. I wish they would. Okay. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So first you need to know about the anatomy of this template that we're working with here. I've gone ahead and you'll see a plus sign and a minus sign. That just means that this square with the light brown is basically, or tan, is going to be made of the add mode of the mask tool, while the ones with the dark brown are going to be the subtract mode of the mask tool, and that just makes it easier for me to paint here without it accidentally bleeding over these edges. Okay, and I'm doing something a bit different, doing some different biomes than from the last couple, because we've done a lot of the similar different types of biomes. Mountain range is a similar one, but let's add in some new ones that people haven't seen. So there's like an asteroid impact, some floating islands, an archipelago, and we've added in a jungle pool and some Arctic, so some stuff that's different from our previous thing. So let's just jump right in. Remember that this first square, if you're going along, is in the add mode of the mask tool. It's going to be the FG, the foreground, while the brown is going to be the BG, that's the background, okay? Let's jump right into tools. The first thing we're going to do is you're going to go ahead and select the brush tool or press the B key, okay? So once you press the B key, it's going to pop out on the left side here. These are going to be all your options. That includes your advanced settings. If you don't see this advanced settings when it drops down, there could be two problems. One, you can just use your mouse wheel to scroll up and down, or two, you also want to change the magnification of your window because it might be zoomed in so much that this is blocked out, okay? And I do highly recommend that you use shortcut keys. So if you press the B key again, it will close the window that's open, okay? So definitely use shortcut keys. Those are going to speed up your process. There's no magic trick to making maps super, super fast except for just improving your process and getting a little bit more faster, okay? So let's dive right in. We're going to do a mountain range, okay? We're going to go into the catalog for stamps. Actually, first, let's go into the brush tool. Sorry about that. We're going to want to pick a texture that's going to be the base, okay? So choosing a base texture for your biome helps you to distinguish where each biome is on your world map, and it also helps you decide like where the physics, it works well. So you wouldn't want a desert to be high up over by your tundra, and you wouldn't want a jungle necessarily in the middle of a desert, okay? So color coding or texture coding your biomes on your map is really useful to understand if those biomes go well together, okay? So let's pick the base texture. I'm going to choose a brown color that I feel might go well. Let's just choose, let's say, I see here, let's go with this texture right here. It's land brown 1, and use your rectangle shape like this, and you can just drag like this and fill in the whole space, okay? And you're going to make sure it's set to the right layer, plus sign, so FG, and you can press the enter key to make it apply, okay? So you press enter, and you'll notice that the texture is applied, and it's a quick way too to also fill up your entire map with a texture. Instead of having a bucket that just fills everything, you just use this rectangle shape, click, hold, drag it across the entire screen, press apply, okay? Don't forget to remember what layer it's on, okay? And you can switch between FG and BG, by the way, with your 1 and 2 keys. So 1 is FG, 2 is BG, okay? Really, really useful when you want to switch between layers, okay? Let's go jump right into the catalog. You're going to press the O key to enter for object, and then you're going to press the F key to open the catalog, okay? Now once you open up the catalog, you'll see on the left upload button for your custom assets. In fact, there's a video that's been uploaded and will be public tomorrow on how to upload custom assets, okay? Just know there is a limit of 100, I believe, okay? So you're going to notice there's some filters here that'll help you go through everything, okay? That could be useful later on. You're going to notice the style that we're in. It's going to be fantasy world. You're going to click this arrow, drop down to go through the list of all the different packs, dive right into the catalog, and we're going to think about mountains that we want to use. And you'll see there's a whole list here. If you kind of want to see everything at more expansive, then just press the expand all, okay? Give it a second, lagging just a little bit. All right, you're going to notice the gray square is where everything, where the stamp set begins. So everything in the set is right here, okay? And also don't forget that you can also click show title. So just in case you don't know the name of something, it's there. So that way you can remember it next time you just want to search for it in the search bar. And don't forget there are tags. Tags are extremely useful, so look for those, okay? I'm going to turn the titles off. And also, if you're going across styles, you can click the search all toggle here, and it will search for every single thing within these packs, okay, whether you have them selected or not, so keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and jump right into mountains, okay? So we have a mountain right here. I'm going to zoom in close. You can use your mouse scroll wheel to zoom in and out, okay? And you can also hold down the space bar to pan. Okay, so these are super important. We're going to go in real close because we want to see what we're doing. And we're going to want to have to decide scale. Because these are little tiny boxes, we're going to have to drop the scale down a little bit. Okay, you can hold down the shift key and use your mouse scroll wheel to change the size. Okay, so let's go pick a size that we want. We're going to go smaller than 100. Let's go with 60. Okay, and we're going to place just one down to see how it looks. Yeah, it looks okay. All right, so when building your mountain ranges, you should know that mountain ranges are generally are S-curves. Okay, I've mentioned this in previous videos, but you want to just start anywhere you want and then just kind of do these S curves, okay? And just do it with one size, which is 60. And so you're kind of creating these S curves, and they don't have to be this pronounced. It can be less S curves. It can be more like this if you want. That's just up to you. I'm just having it that way, okay? So I'm going to delete that. Okay. So now once you've placed your main mountain range or your ridge line, which you have here, you're also going to create some other ones that are branching out, okay? Go back, and you'll want to make sure that all of these are at the same layer so that they interact properly. You'll notice that it's layer 1. If I was to put layer 2 and I was to go across like this, it would go over the whole thing and not interact properly. So don't do that. Make sure it's all at the same layer, okay? If these mountains are at layer 1, that means your little branching off mountains need to also be at layer 1, and that includes all your other stamps, trees, hills, stuff like that. So we're going to drop down the size just 1, take it to 50, and we're going to pick some spots for our branches to come out. I'm going to pick the top of the S-curve like this so that it follows out like this. You click once, just click a couple times, like this, okay? There's your little branch, another branch. You can even put one here, and maybe put another one right here, okay? So you have these little branches coming out, and we're going to go ahead and hold down that shift key and drop the size down again to even smaller, okay? Because as these branches go out, they're going to get a little bit smaller. So add in some smaller sizes there. Okay, one there, put one here. All right, and you can pick any mountain. It doesn't have to be this mountain brown. Just pick the mountain that you want. Think about your theme, okay? If it's going to be something like Mordor, where it's dark and scary, then use those dark mountains. If you're making like a desert, then you might want to consider using these brown ones. That's fine. Or you can use the green ones. So just think about what the biome is. A mountain range, there's all kinds of mountains, different ranges. So let's just stick with the basic, but you can go with any one of them. Like if you had a mountain range up in a tundra or up in the Arctic, then your mountains are going to have a lot of snow. So just think about the theme that you want for your mountain. I'm going with something simple. Okay. I'm also just going to randomly place a couple in these curves here to kind of break up that nice curve. Okay. All right. So now you have your main range here and some branching mountains. Okay. Let's go ahead and zoom out, take a look, select everything, kind of move it in a way that we want it. Okay, where we want it. Right here. Okay. And then from there, you're going to think about your foothills. Okay. First, I'll talk a little bit about just how mountains are formed. There's a couple ways, but the most well-known one is just plates hitting up against each other and pushing upward. Okay? So you have, let's say you have two plates like this, one plate here, and they're hitting against each other like this. All right? And then what happens is it causes it to go up. These two plates push up like this. They hit each other, push up, creating these ranges. Okay? There are all other ways that mountains are formed. That's not the only one. It's just the one that's the most well known. Okay? A lot of people know about tectonic plates and that kind of movement and those plates hitting up against each other, pushing upward. Okay? So land masses collide, create mountains. Let's go ahead and check our chat, make sure everyone's doing good. All right. So we're going to go ahead and first put down our hills, and then we're going to blend in our mountains. Because I noticed in chat someone had mentioned that there's a lightness at the base. Yeah, that's a total problem. But don't worry about that yet. We're just going to go ahead and do one thing at a time. You're going to save your blending for when you've added all your stamps. There's no point in blending something if there's nothing to blend it with. So, and what I mean by blending is the stamp with the base texture that you've chosen. So these stamps against this texture, okay? We aren't going to blend all that until we've added all our stamps. So let's go ahead and do that. Now let's go back into the catalog. You press the O key, press the F key, open up into mountains. You're going to see all the stuff. I'm going to go ahead and choose a hill of my choice. Let's go ahead and choose this light brown one for now. Just put one down, see how it looks. Looks a little bright, so we can go down to advanced settings if we want to. And before we do that, let's make sure that all of them do it. So if you go straight over to your object tool, O key, all right, you have this selected. Know that it will, basically when you open the object key or the object tool, whatever, or stamp tool, whatever stamp you selected last is going to show up, okay? So if I select this key, okay, and I select a mountain, and I go back, you're going to notice that mountains are selected. So go back to hills, okay? All right? And you're just going to show up in your recently used, and make sure to favorite your stamps if you're going to use them a lot, okay? Not sure if you're aware of that, but if you intend to use a stamp a lot on a map, make sure you click this little Save to Favorite button. Go over to the Favorite tab and you'll see it, okay? So just keep that in mind. All right, and I do think that this hill, if you look at it, looks a little bit different in color. It looks a little brighter. So why don't we go down to our advanced settings, okay? Go to Filters, HSBC, go to Brightness, and we're going to drop it down just a bit. Okay, and the reason why we're doing that is because we just don't want those two stamps to be in such contrast to each other. Let's place one down and just see how it looks. That's okay with me. And you're just going to place them randomly along here, okay? And they look a little big, so let's drop them down just a bit, okay? We can keep those large ones, that's fine. But for now, we're going to keep them small. Maybe even go up one more side. And basically, you're going to place them at the base of where your mountains are, okay? All right, place these on, place one there. Again, make sure that you're at layer 1, okay? So keep that in mind. After we've added these hills, we can go ahead and move on to go ahead and blending in these stamps so they look better together with our base texture. Again, blending is something you save for near the end when it comes to terrain, because if you want to do blending, you're going to have to need both the stamps and the textures to work with. So always, always, always do your blending after you've placed all your stamps and not before, okay? All right, and we're going to add some really, really tiny hills in here. Maybe just a little bit bigger. And I am editing in 2K, so I do apologize for the blur. Okay, I just noticed that the, unfortunately, when I have it at 4K and I'm streaming and recording, it takes so much longer, and there's a huge lag, and I don't really want that in the video, so let's not do that. Okay, so you've added some mountains here. Okay, now we're going to zoom out, take a look. I'm not going to deselect everything with your escape key. That deselects everything. Don't forget about changes. Just so you know, I save my changes about 100 or so changes, maybe more. Just depends what we're doing. We'll quickly save here. Now just know that the more objects that you have on your map, the more filters and the more stuff, the more data, the more information you have in your change history up here. If I click this, you'll notice that these are all the changes that I've made. Okay? That the more of that you have in here, the more changes you have, the longer it will take to save, the longer it will take to export, the longer it will take to load the map. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. Have a little bit of patience. The more data you have on your map, obviously the longer it's going to take to do those three things. So just keep that in mind. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is go right over to the brush tool, B key, right, and then press the F key to open the catalog, and we're going to go ahead and pick a texture that we're going to try to use to blend in, okay, because we have our stamps now. So the objective now is to kind of pick a brush that we want, and I'm going to choose this edge shape. Now the edge shape is really, really useful for blending. It looks great for land biomes, for what works on land. I don't recommend using the edgy brush for the water. Instead, I recommend it for land, okay? You're going to want to go with a relatively small brush, okay? And we're going to want to drop down to feature size 3, and we're going to want to drop the opacity, and I'll explain why that is. If you don't change the opacity, this is what you're going to get, okay? And that doesn't look good, right? It looks kind of weird like that, okay? So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to drop the opacity down quite a bit, okay? And you'll notice that it's a little bit it's not quite as distinct because it's a lower opacity. So what you're going to do is you're going to just go hold down the pen once, okay? And then just go underneath all the stamps with just one pass, okay? If you have a pen, this works great. If your mouse, then you're just going to have to take your mouse, go over, click, hold, and drag. Don't release until you've did your first pass, okay? Cover everything. That includes the mountains, these hills here, okay? This is just your first pass. Blending is about multiple strokes, using multiple passes to get the desired effect. Now you can go with just one pass like we're doing right here, like this. There's one pass. Maybe that's fine with you, okay? But if you want more blending, then you'll have to do a second pass, okay? So I'm going to drop the size down, and I'm going to do these single kind of clicks like this. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have you want that texture to show the most at the base of the mountains, okay? We can go up actually with a higher size and just do another pass like this, okay? We'll do single clicks later. Let's just try to make sure that the base of these textures, the base of these stamps are blended in well, okay? And as you can kind of see, it already looks slightly better at the base because it was this brightness that someone had mentioned, and we're going to fix that problem right now. So we're blending it in like this, going across. Okay, looks good, looks good. Now the edgy brush is great because it kind of creates these little edges here. Looks great for blending. So we'll add that in, okay. And then we're going to take a smaller brush and just do single clicks, okay, just on the outside, because you'll notice there's this edge along here. Let's kind of just break that up, okay. And what you're doing is you're making it to where these edges blend in, these edges here blend in with this base texture, okay. Now you don't have to do single clicks if you don't want to, that's okay. It's just a technique that I use and I think makes blending look so much better. Okay? Alright. I just want to apologize to everybody for the stream starting a little late. We're having some technical difficulties, so I appreciate everyone's patience. Okay. Just know that single clicks like that with the edgy brush are going to start to accumulate a lot of changes. So after you finish doing your blending in together like that, you're going to want to make sure you save, okay? Can't stress it enough. Save often. Okay. Sweet. Thank you everybody for helping out in the chat. Appreciate it. Okay. So this is our mountain range. Looks a little brown, okay? So if we want, we can continue with a little bit more, adding a little bit more texturing, because it's hard to tell what's going on here with just this all brown. So we're going to apply some other textures. We're going to open up the catalog and maybe pick this grass red or maybe this grass brown. Let's just use this red one, okay? And we're going to, again, use the edgy brush. You can make it bigger. And what we're going to do is we're going to take these negative spaces where there's this brown at right here, and we're going to go ahead and apply a texture. And we're going to have to do just a little bit more blending, okay? Let's apply this green texture here. Just put it in that negative space, okay? Don't forget, it's on a different layer, so you won't accidentally bleed into here. That's kind of nice. Okay, so you got this green texture here. Looks a little nicer. And we're going to go ahead and apply it again here, more closer into the center. Again here. What we're trying to do is, you want to do less work when it comes to your terrain, okay? So more work means adding little bushes and trees and grass and everything everywhere. You can let textures do the majority of the work for you. Instead of adding all of these grass stamps everywhere to make it look like grass, use a texture, okay? You want to speed up your process, you want things to go a bit quicker, okay? Then you definitely want to use textures to your advantage to give yourself less work. All right, let's go ahead also and add a couple more elements to our mountain ranges. Lots of forests are at the base of mountains, okay? So keep that in mind. And we're going to go ahead and put in a forest right in this shape right here or here, okay? So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go ahead and open up the catalog. We're going to press the O key, We're going to press the F key to open the catalog, and we're going to pick some trees of our choice that we like. Okay, and I'll probably pick one that won't be too contrasty. Maybe this pine tree will be good. Okay. Now, what's really nice about mountain ranges is that mountain ranges are technically, in my opinion, one of the first things that you add on your map, at least a world map or a regional map. If you have mountains, add them right away, okay? And mountains work great as a reference for scale, okay? So when you're zoomed in close and you're looking at your mountain ranges and you're looking at your trees, you're going to think to yourself, okay, how big do I want my tree to be? Okay? Now, there's a couple things that you want to factor in when it comes to scale. All right, the first one is how much realism, okay? Because scale, there are multiple ways to deal with scale. A map is a representation of reality, so you can go with different routes. If you want, you can exaggerate things by making things either too big or too small, okay? And that's something that a lot of cartographers have done. You look around online and you'll see lots of maps that are clearly just simply not to scale. The mountain ranges are far too large, the trees are too large, it's just simply not to scale. But that's the style that that cartographer has decided to choose. Okay, so you got to keep that in mind, that it just depends on what you're going for. If you're going with scale, mountains, if you're going for like exact scale, you want scale to be somewhat close. Obviously, exact is impossible. Mountains are huge. Trees would be so tiny that you would barely even see them. Individual trees wouldn't be able to even be visible. It would be kind of a big, giant mass of green. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a tree size that's somewhat visible. It probably is quite large. Let's see if I place it down. You notice that tree is quite large. Okay, but that's okay, because if it was any bit smaller, it would be very difficult to see, especially in 2K. All right. So we've got our tree here. We picked our size. It is a little large, and that's okay. We're going to go with a style that kind of is a little exaggerated. So you're going to also make sure it's at the proper layer 1, just like these are all at layer 1, because you want this tree to react properly with these hills and these other stamps, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just start at the base, click and hold and drag, okay, like this. And you'll see that it interacts quite well with the mountains. And again, you'll notice that the trees are a bit big, and that's okay. We want them to be visible. We're going to go with something stylized. A lot of maps are actually stylized. I don't know of any maps that are actually perfectly to scale. I'm not sure that's even possible. Okay, but if you want to follow Earth physics and you want to follow all that stuff, if the scale is what you're interested in, then yeah, use your mountains. I mean, even as a stylized, use mountains as your guide. Okay, really helpful. I'm not going to add any villages or any structures. This is purely terrain, and I will make sure that this map, once it's all finished, will be available for you guys to clone and edit. Okay, that way if you want to go ahead and add in your own structures to these locations, you can. And remember that next month the videos, our streams, are going to be actually adding structures to every single one of these templates that we've made from all the various styles from the month. Okay, so next will be structures. I'll be sure to also fit in, like I said earlier in the video, some filter videos on how to operate the filter, how to maximize effects, and to really stylize your maps. And I'll also include some streams on how to do architecture. We've done a few already. We've done taverns, we've done caves, and a couple other interiors. So maybe dedicate a whole month or a couple streams to how to put together houses, guilds, shops, blacksmiths, all those things. And obviously those are going to be in the battle map styles. So fantasy battle map, watercolor battle maps, not going to be very useful with regional and world styles of parchment. Okay, so we've added some trees here. Okay, now something a little bit about forests. I know we also have some, I'm checking to see if we have any forests in here. We don't. So let's go ahead and break down a little bit about forests. So the closer that you get to the interior of a forest, just know that it's going to be the most dense. So if you want, make sure that the center of your forests are really, really, really dense. Okay. Now if you prefer to have your forests have a label in them, then don't do that. I've mentioned this in previous streams, but I'm going to show you a quick trick on how to label forests real quick. So you're going to go ahead and put your name of your forest. Let's just say forest name, whatever. Okay. And you're going to do your curvature like this. I want to rotate. One of the tricks that you can do to quickly label your forest is to put your label first and then just put your trees around it, okay? Since I don't have a forest panel, I'll just show you how to do that real quick. Okay? So basically you're just building a frame around the title so that you have an easy forest, okay? And you can also put random ones in some clusters like this, okay? So just a quick little pro tip on how to make your forests, and also you might want to consider adding in your texture in here as well. Make it darker at the base, all right, and then add a lighter texture in the center, okay? So this is kind of a quick tip on how to label your forests. And while we're at it, let's also name our mountain range, because that is it. I'm going to delete this, okay? There is some guides on how to do that as well, but I hope I explained it well enough, okay? Let's go ahead and add in our last bit of greenery here. And we're going to create some little patches here, okay? And don't forget to add some trees on the outside so it doesn't look like just this random circle. Like that looks kind of cool, but adding 1 or 2 trees here or there kind of breaks that up, so kind of keep that in mind. And also, trees work great when you want to hide the base of your stamps. So one thing is this: you see all this line work connecting in the ground, okay? It's nice to add trees just to go over those lines so that it kind of makes the transition a little better. Don't forget to do the same thing with your hills, okay? And you can even change up your tree if you want. Go back into the catalog. Let's go ahead and use this green tree right here. It should be the same size and layer 1. Perfect. And then we can add in a different forest up here, okay? So I'm going to place them here. Make sure to get them, some of them covering up some of the base of your line work of your mountains, okay? So that kind of breaks that up, makes it look nice. Put some over here, okay? All right, sweet, looking good. Let's take a zoom out. Okay, so you're gonna get the basic idea, all right? There's one last thing that we're gonna make. We're gonna make a little mountain lake, okay? There's a jungle pool, but we're gonna put in 1 lake just so I can show you guys. Now, I've mentioned this in previous videos, but there are 2 ways to make rivers. I'm gonna quickly explain how that would work. With mountain ranges, I would highly recommend that you don't go with the add mode or subtract mode of the mask tool. Instead, use the path tool. I did create a guide for that. Go ahead and click the link up to my profile and you'll see that guide. Okay, let's quickly save first, and I'm going to show you guys how to use the path tool on how to make your headwaters, rivers, and a quick lake. Okay, because a lot of these elements are seen near mountains, forests, and lakes and rivers. So let's quickly do that, and then we'll move on to the next thing. First, let's make our lake. Now this is the add mode of the mask tool, as you can see that plus sign. So subtract mode, and I'm going to use the circle brush. I don't want to use the edgy brush to make my lake because it's going to create these weird funky edges. Instead, when it comes to lakes, I'm going to instead use my circle brush. In fact, let's not use the subtract mode at all, even for our lake, because we've got these hard edges here. If you go into the mask tool, you'll see advanced settings, okay? You're going to see a toggle here that's going to turn all these off. If I was to turn all of them off, you'll see my lines change. So just know that it might work better here in this situation to actually use the path tool. So you press the P key to open the path tool, okay? And just place 1 path down immediately, okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to click over to selection, and we're going to change the options of this path, okay? You'll see an advanced options, but we don't need that. First thing we want to do is choose our width, so let's pick that. I think that looks pretty good. We're also going to want to change the opacity all the way up to 1. And we're going to want to put our layer all the way up to, let's say layer 3 for now. We might change our layer later. Let's go to color. We're going to make it blue, okay? And then we're also going to go to our shadows, turn blur off all the way, and turn the opacity slider for the color all the way off, okay? And then we're also going to change the blend mode. Scroll down and select hue, okay? And now when I place this over, you're still going to see that blue. Okay? That's why we're choosing hue. And there's another reason why we're choosing hue. It's because when I go over with another path, you'll notice that there's no actual overlap. So you can make as many strokes as you want with the path tool and to make this river whiter because it doesn't show the overlap. So hue is really the best blend mode if you are going to make a river, okay? Now here's some tips also when doing this. So we're going to make a lake. I'm going to go ahead and use the largest size, okay? Because I want it to be big. So we're going to put a lake like this, okay? And you can fill it in like this too, that's fine, okay? Now there's some tips I want you guys to know about the path tool, okay? Like if you are making a lake and you're making a big one on a map that, oopsie, I do see there is some overlap there. That might be something to do with our shadows. But I want to do a real quick pro tip, okay? That if you're making like a big lake or something, you should definitely go with something like make the lake small first, like this, okay? And the great thing about path is that you can increase the size of it, okay? So if I go over here to the select tool, it's selected, I can go in and scale it up, okay? And that way it's less work. Instead of trying to make this huge shape, start with a small shape like this and then just scale it up. So that's really the beauty of using the path tool for that. So and you can also rotate it any way that you want, okay? So I can push it in here, maybe drop the scale down just a little bit. Okay, this is kind of our mountain lake. It's quite a big lake. Let's go with something just a teeny bit smaller, okay? So there's our lake, all right? We're gonna go back to the path tool. We're gonna drop the size down. Make sure it's the right size, that looks good, okay? We're gonna zoom in. Now the first thing you need to know about lakes is that lakes are formed by snow melt and rainfall in the mountains. So snow melt, rainfall collects into what's called our headwaters, okay? And you can put them anywhere in the mountain. I'm going to go ahead and drop it down one and have it to where the lake is in the back of this mountain. So we're going to have it go. And now once it hits flat ground, it's going to do what's called meandering, okay? Now meandering is basically S-curves, just like we did with this mountain range here, okay? We created these S-curves to kind of create a more natural shape. And we're doing the same thing with our river, okay? So our river is going to create these S shapes, and meandering, as I've mentioned in other streams, is caused by sediment being carried by the river's flow, by the water, and that sediment slams up against the bank, eroding it, causing it to expand, okay? I'll really quickly show you what that looks like. Let me quickly add this size. So once you get to flatland, you're going to do what's called meandering. Now the larger the S-curve, the larger that meander is, right here, like this, that's the older the river. The older the river is. If a river has really short, small curves like this, it's a young river because more sediment is going up against here and causing this to erode, okay? Now also keep in mind that your edges like this are going to be a bit whiter, so you can apply your hue or more to make these whiter. So kind of keep that in mind. Make it just a little bit whiter here. Okay, you can keep adding more just to make them whiter. Okay, and as they flow and as they connect, there's something called a tributary. Now a tributary is a river that connects into another river, increasing that river's water flow and size. Okay, so rivers are going to get wider as they get to the ocean. So at this point, the closer you get to the ocean, the wider the mouth of the river, the wider the river is going to be, okay? So just kind of keep all of that information in mind, okay? I'm going to delete all those, okay? We're going to add one quick path in here, and we're going to have it go out to here like this. And so basically that river is going to go out to the ocean, okay? So and then you can also create the tributaries, which are more going into this lake, okay? More going into this lake. Okay, so those are coming from various headwaters that come to this lake, and then it flows out, okay, to the ocean, okay? So that's basically mountain ranges. Okay, I hope that all made sense. Hey, White, good to see you. Hello, Anthony. Oh, awesome, so many great faces. Great to see you all. All right, let's go ahead and save it 31 changes, and we'll move on to the next biome. There's so many more things you could do, adding in more textures and stuff, but we've worked so much time on this one, so let's just move on to the next. Let's save it real quick. And we'll do something totally different than the last couple videos. All right, I'm taking a look at the mountain range. Looks okay to me. There's our lake. All right. There's obviously so much more to be added to around here. Okay, but we're just going to stick with the mountain ranges. But there's all kinds of things that you can fill in here, texturing and stamps. Okay, so Asteroid Impact is a bit different than your average mountain range or a wasteland or a jungle. So it's a bit special, but I notice that some people like to use them. So let's go straight into the object menu. Okay, and we're going to click the F key, and we're going to pick these craters right here. Okay, so we have our craters. We're going to zoom in a little bit, getting close, and we're going to go ahead and cycle through the various craters that we have. Okay, now look at it, say, okay, this crater, and we're going to place it down. Okay, now I'm going to teach you guys a couple cool tricks that are really useful if you want to change the perspective and change the blend modes. So let's say that this is the texture that I've decided to go with, and you'll notice right away that this is so bright in comparison. There is something called luminosity. It's a blend mode. And what luminosity does is it takes whatever texture is on the background or whatever on the layer you're in. This is the BG layer, okay? It's going to pick up whatever texture, okay? Now you might say, well, it's still too bright. It doesn't work well, right? Then you're going to go to your advanced settings, right? Go to filters, go to brightness. And if you drop the brightness like this, you'll notice that that crater starts to fit in just a little bit better, right? So that matches in, right? So you want to create your crater impact. Now I want to show you guys something really cool. Select your stamp, go to your advanced settings, select transform, and you'll notice that you can change or skew a bit of the stamp. Okay, this is really useful if you want to change the angle a little bit. So you have right here this kind of angle right here, and if you want to show more of the crater's interior, then just change the height, and you'll see that there's more room to put things inside of it. So if I was to go back, you notice that there's less room to put things inside of it. So, but if you increase the height like this, then you can change it, okay? Just notice that your line work notice the line work is really thick because I've had to scale it up real big to fit into this square, okay? But if you go down, the line work's not as bad. And if you're just not satisfied with that line work, just know that you can also go back to filters and change contrast. So, and you'll notice that it starts to lose some of its dark unless you go up, and it will increase, okay? So contrast just means the lightest lights and the darkest darks are going to pop out more. If you don't want that dark line work, you can drop the contrast, okay? I think it's fine as it is, so I'm going to leave it. There is one other thing, too, that I want to notice about craters is that you'll notice that there's a shadow baked into the crater. So keep in mind that when you are making your map and you want to do shadows, make sure that whatever stamps you put down follow also that light where the light sources are, and you can change it too. If you don't like that the light is on that side, you can go right over here to flip horizontal like this, okay? And you'll notice that the shadow will flip, so you can change it to whatever you want. We'll just have the sun on this side hitting this, so just so you know, if this side is shadowy, this is where your light source is going to be, okay? And if it helps you, then you can just put a little thing here that shows where the light source is if you want to remember, okay? But there's a guide that'll help you out with that. I'm going to change the blend mode, normal, change it to yellow. That way it looks like a light source. So this is where our light source is, okay? So kind of factor that in when you're doing your shading and your light sources. So you have this large crater impact. When a crater is created by an asteroid, what it's going to do is it does two things. It impresses into the land right here where the crater is, but it also pushes land up. Okay, so you'll see that there's some land like this. It's pushed that surrounding land upward. So if you want, you can add some interesting things in there to represent that if you want. And you can also have multiple meteor impacts if you want as well. So if you want to add another one, you could add one right here. Just remember, you have to go through all the same things. You've got to go in and change the blend mode to luminosity, and you also can change the transform so the height is up. So you'll have multiple meteor impacts if you want. And that's why you have like this uplifted land right here. So in the center where it comes into contact, that creates the impression in the land, and then the surrounding land goes up. That's why you see that, okay? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and just delete that. It doesn't need to be there. We're gonna focus on this one. We'll make it nice and big so you can see it. If you wanna add more stuff to it, if you wanna add more, like let's say some stuff popping out, you can totally do that. So there's some fun ways to do that. I'm gonna create this kind of jagged landscape that's around these edges, okay? And the way I'm going to do that is, again, go ahead and change our blend mode to luminosity. I want it to match in. It does look a little bright, so maybe we want to also change the filter and change the brightness down, okay? We're going to zoom in and we're going to change the size and rotate and just kind of see how it works. And the way that I add in little jagged rocks is by connecting line work. So you see there's a line right here in the crater, and there's a line right here, the line work from this. So I'm going to line those two things up like this, and also make sure it's on the right layer. So we're going to go up one, okay. And you're going to go ahead and connect, and you see that the line work works well, making it look like it's jagged, okay. And we're going to do that same thing. We're just going to go through the various ones, and we're going to add little jagged points to each one. So let's add one there, okay. And you got to be strategic about it, because you don't want that line work to be underneath. Notice there, see it looks weird, you have that line work there. So you have to be strategic. Think about where you want to add your various jagged pieces, okay? We're going to add one there, and we'll add a couple in the front as well. That'll be nice. Let's choose this double one, looks kind of nice. Okay, and again, you're going to want to make sure you line up that line work. Okay, and you can use that transform tool too, if you want those line works to match up. So I'm going to go ahead and just quickly do this, put them side by side, and you'll notice that these two lines match up with the line work there, okay? Just kind of a pro tip, line up the line work of the art, okay? Let's go ahead and add in a couple more spikes or a couple more jagged sections popping out. Let's see here, let's go with something smaller. Let's go with this one actually. Make it smaller, go out to here, okay. And let's have some of it overlap with this. Okay, and we'll think about the line work, connect those, okay. So you have like your jagged rock that was pushed up, okay. Think about that, all right. And there's all kinds of other things that you can include in your meteor impact. You can also show that there was a, what's called a concussion blast. So when the meteor comes into contact, it makes the impression, it creates a huge concussion shock wave, which is going to knock over trees, possibly even unroot them, how close it is. So the way that you're going to portray that is you want to pick your tree type, okay? Let's pick something a bit different from our other trees. Let's choose this one, okay? It's a little bright. You can change it if you want, okay? Drop the brightness down. Okay, so now you're going to look at your tree, okay? And the way to do that is to just rotate your tree a little bit, okay? And you notice that these are kind of rotated a little bit, and you can keep doing that with each direction. So you got one over here, and what this kind of portrays is that there's been a concussion wave, an impact that took place, and these trees kind of got pushed, tilted a little bit, so that's what we're trying to do here. And I definitely recommend that you have them overlap some of the line work, okay? Because it kind of hides that, makes it look nice. Okay, and if you don't like that, that's okay. You don't have to. You could have it to where there's just a bunch of stumps right here and then have trees along the edge, because it looks like the closer you are to the impact, the stronger the concussion wave is going to be. It's obviously going to dissipate. As it goes out, it's going to lose its momentum. Okay, so if you want, you can make stumps here, and you can do that by just making small trees or using dead trees. Okay, so you could do that too. Let's just go ahead and delete all these. And I'll kind of show how that works. We're going to delete every single one of these. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and just select every single one of them and press delete. Okay. So let's go with dead trees first, closest to the crater where the impact zone is. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and add other trees that don't have their leaves broken off. So F key, open up. Here's our dead tree. These are super bright against this, so you might want to drop the brightness in the advanced settings. Okay. And we can have them again tilted. That's fine, okay? We're going to put these closest to the impact zone, okay? Don't put them far out unless you want to. That's okay. Depends what you're going for. If the whole area is just dead, then that's not a problem. Go ahead, okay? But I'm going to say that this impact took place a while ago, and so we'll have some living trees in the surround. Also, don't forget to do this changing of the size of the tree. Having trees all be the exact same size kind of creates this monotony that looks odd, okay? So by just dropping down the size of your trees, adding a little bit more, adds a little bit more realism to it, because there's obviously in reality, when you go into a forest, you're not seeing all the trees being at the exact same size and bushes. It's all so varying, so creating that variety is really helpful, okay? Let's go ahead now, we can add our tree in, and you can put these in the surround like this. Okay, I'm just going to put them around like this, and we're going to create kind of a circle frame that goes around. I'm going to go ahead and erase my light source because I'm not going to be adding any structures, so I don't have to worry about a lot of shadows. But in the future, it's really helpful if you create a light source guide that you have on your map so that you can understand where the light is, and you'll know, that way you won't have make any mistakes, okay? Okay. All right, here and there we go. So you kind of have these trees where it's on the surround farther away from the crater impact. Obviously, in real life, these would obviously feel a major part of the impact, but remember, we are doing a representation, so don't worry about sticking straight perfectly to Earth physics. I don't think that's even realistic. You know, try to be as realistic as you can, but don't try to overdo it, okay? Like a map is just a representation. You don't have to worry about making it perfectly to scale. Otherwise, you're going to be pulling hair out trying to make it perfect to scale. So just kind of, you're going to have to make your piece eventually with, you know, just how realistic you're going to get with it. And don't forget just straight up the limitations of the tool, okay? So keep all that stuff in mind. So there's our asteroid impact, and we can do a lot of other things too. We want to change up maybe the texture that we want, okay? So if you want it to be different, you can. So we can go ahead and go through our texture catalog and just kind of look at things, excuse me, and just kind of see what you want to work with. I kind of like the texture here. You notice that this is a swamp texture. I really like a lot of the texturing that's in it. If we go to size, we can kind of take a look at it. Oopsie, wrong one, placement size. Okay, I like all the artifacts and everything that's going on in that, but I'm not satisfied with the color, obviously, so we go over to filters, and we're going to go ahead and change the saturation, and we're going to change the brightness, increase the contrast. Now it's got all these nice artifacts in it, and we're going to want to obviously change the opacity, okay, and I'm going to want to also change my size. I'm going to not use the edgy brush, okay. Well, actually, we should. Let's just do that. Let's go with the edgy brush, because we kind of create this illusion of cracked ground, right? So let's go ahead to opacity. For some reason, my opacity slider is not working. It's not popping up. Okay, let's do this. Okay, increase this. Let's drop the size down to 36. Do one stroke just to kind of make sure, and we want to be on the right layer, BG. Okay, I'm going to apply this texture to here, okay? And don't forget, it's set to luminosity, so your stamps are also going to pick up this texture, okay? All right. Don't worry about going over to these edges here, because it's set to the texture already. And what we're doing is just kind of adding in that nice kind of artifacts that are in that texture, okay? Sometimes you're not always going to be satisfied with the textures as they are in default, so always play with your placement and your filters to kind of change those textures up, so you really have an almost endless amount of textures to work with if you understand how placement and filters work, because you can change the hue, you can change the size, you can change the blend mode, or not the blend mode, but the hue and all the different filters. So really you have an infinite number of kind of textures to work with besides the default if you know how to play with the advanced settings, okay? So kind of just keep that in mind. And I'm also going to go over to color and choose this nice black texture, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in here a little bit just to add a little bit more shading, okay? All right, so you kind of add in there, so you're getting a little more shading. If that's where the sun is, then we also want to add a little bit of shading as well here. So you're going to go along the edge here. Don't go inward along this ledge. Go on the outside of it. Oopsie, that's not going to work. Let's change it to the softness brush. Don't use edgy brush for shadows, okay? We're just going to do it here, like this. Okay, so it kind of looks like this is where the shadow is, okay? All right, so there's some shadow there. All right, that looks good. Add in there, okay. All right, so you have like this meteor impact. Let's go ahead and take a look at it all. Looks good. You've got your dead trees kind of leaning from the concussion blast. You've got your forest that kind of grew back its leaves, so it looks like some time has passed. Okay, I'm going to take a look at everything as a whole, move this here. Okay, there we go. So that looks pretty good. There's your asteroid impact. And we'll move on to the next one. Okay. I'm also going to refresh the page. We've done quite a few changes. The changelog is just absolutely massive. In fact, you notice that it doesn't actually have all the changes in. So that's why it's great to refresh. So what you're doing when you're refreshing is that you are clearing out this changelog, and that is going to be extremely helpful because as data is being passed between the site and your machine, data gets old and it might cause some bugs. That's just the limitations of a web browser tool. We don't have an executable yet, though it is definitely on the table. I know people are excited about that. So it is a lot of work. So it's no time soon. There's so many things that we're working on. So be patient with us. We have a small team, small developer team. And so it's what our plates are generally very, very full. So please have patience with us, okay, on that. Let's go ahead and refresh the page. I'm just going to click the refresh a couple times, okay? Might have you log back in. That's fine. We're going to open this right up. Go edit map. Open it up. Okay, we're going to let it load. Okay, it's going to take a moment. And I'm going to show you guys how to make floating islands. I think I do have a tutorial or a guide as well on my profile that shows you how to make floating islands, and I think it's specifically with the world style. But I'll show you how to make floating islands here. Okay? So first step is we want to make our floating island. Okay? So you want to go to your object tool, O key, then F key. Okay? You're going to open up, and I use mountains for floating islands. They work really, 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 really well. Let's go with something different than brown. Let's go ahead and choose a green mountain. Okay? So here's your green mountain, right? So you're going to pick one that you want to use. It's up to you. Okay? I'm going to scroll through, find the one that I like. I'm going to make it big so it's easier to see and work with. So you choose one, right? Next thing you're going to do is you're going to rotate the next one, size it down, and you want to connect, okay, these two stamps together to where the line work meets. Okay? And also you're going to want to flip. So you'll notice that there's some shadow on different sides. So you're going to go ahead and flip and rotate like this, right? And now you're going to notice that the shadows are on the right side. Okay? So the shadows are on the right side. Now just bring them in nice and close. All right? So there you have your mountain. There you have your floating island. You can also drop the brightness of the mountain below because it's a shadow, right? So we'll go to advanced settings and we're going to drop the brightness just a hair. Okay, let's go with maybe 87. So you'll notice there should be at least a noticeable difference to where this is darker than the top one, okay? That's just to represent that this is the top, this is the bottom part is darker with the shadow. Let's go to 90. I think that should be enough here. Oopsie, not that one. My mistake, there we go. This one should be at 90, perfect. Okay, and you've got them together like this, okay? So this is like the base of this is basically the base for your floating island. There's a ton of things that you can do, okay? If we want, we're going to go to transform tool, and if you want, you can make either one of these peaks longer. You can go to transform, go to height, and make it go down so it looks like the base is a little bit bigger, okay? You can do the same thing here. You can drop the height if you want, okay? So now your island looks more like a kind of a bit of a diamond. All right, so it's slowly coming together, so you kind of have that part. All right, now there are some other parts that you can add. This is something that I've done in the past. I absolutely love to add spikes to my floating islands. So you go back, we're going to rotate, go to 100% like this, and place it. Okay, we're going to select it. Okay, and you're going to go to your height. We're going to go make it fairly high, and then we're going to zoom, make it really sharp like this. Okay, so now you have these sharp spikes that are sticking out, and they work great. You can put them right up against like this. Keep in mind the shadows though. Okay, so when you're adding it on like this, okay, so if your light is going on this side, your light is over here on the left, then your shadows are on the right, and so you want to make sure that you rotate and flip them to where the shadows are consistent on the right side. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and add that again. Okay, because we're going to choose a different mountain this time. Let's go with this one. Again, you're going to go with your width. Okay, just go ahead and do that. Okay, increase the size, make it a little bit bigger. Okay, and if you want, because it's on a different side, it's on the shadow side, you can go ahead, go to filters and drop the brightness. Okay, make sure it's not too much, just enough to where it's noticeably different, and don't forget to connect the line work just a hair. Okay, you want to make sure there's some continuity in the line work, so connect those. Let's go ahead and change this up. Might be a little too dark. That looks good. Okay, and we're going to copy and paste, so select those two, drop down a layer. Okay, because we want to put some behind. Okay, so you notice that these will be behind after a certain number of layers, so they're behind like that, right? Perfect. Okay, and we're going to decrease the size, put one out like that. Okay, and we're also going to drop the brightness just a bit. Same thing with this one. We're going to put it over here, and we're going to drop the brightness considerably. Okay, there we go. All right, so it's coming together, going quite well. Now you'll notice that there is no difference between the land and the top part and the bottom part. There's no line work. This is just nitpicky. It's a pro tip, but you can do your own technical line work with it. Okay, and the best way to do it, in my mind, is just to go with black. We're going to place it down real quick just to see what it looks like. Get the length right, and what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that the line work matches up. Okay, so we're going to remove all the shadows, and we're going to drop the opacity. Okay, and then you'll notice that that line almost somewhat matches this. That's quite nice. Okay, and you want to put it up at a layer that's higher up, so it's going to go over. So one thing you can do is kind of connect the line work and go like this. And you can follow the contours like this. Okay, there you go. And now you kind of have the difference between where the top of your floating island is and where the bottom is. Okay, kind of useful. So now you put all those pieces together, right? So you've got them together, and you're going to go ahead and group them. Okay. Now once you've grouped something, I absolutely recommend immediately that you name it so that you know what it is. Obviously, in this tutorial, it's not super important because there's not a lot of groups. But if you are a culprit and you like to use groups a lot, then you'll definitely want to rename them, okay? A couple ways to do that. Hamburger menu, rename. There's no shortcut key for it, or you can just select the group, and you'll see some options here. Edit group, rename group, and lock selection. So let's just go with rename the group, and we're going to call it floating isle. Okay? Unfortunately, I'm all in caps, but it's okay. So now you have it there on the side. You can see it, okay? And now that it's all grouped, you don't have to select everything and move it. So it's all together. That's super nice, okay? So now you can select it and do what you want. And it also creates different layers, by the way, when you group. So this thing's at layer -1. I can just place stuff on top of this, then select everything and group it again, and continuously make groups. So basically what groups do is it allows you to do multiple things. Select something and move it around, multiple stamps, or it creates new layers technically. So you can have more and more layers using groups. Okay, keep that in mind when you're stacking stamps to kind of make things like a city that's on top of a mountain or whatever, okay? So kind of just keep that trick in mind, okay? All right. So now obviously once you've got your floating island, you might want to add some stuff on it, right? You could add more mountains, you could add more stuff to it. So what we just did right? We went ahead and we changed the transform tool and we changed the width like this. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can go ahead and add another peak on top here. You can add another one on top right here. Again, you're going to want to remember that shadow, so make sure it's set right. And also we're going to want to change it to where default brightness. So adding up that line work, so you can add line work there, copy and paste. You can add another peak like right here if you want. There's all these options. You can be a different mountain. I'm just kind of showing you guys. It can be a different one. It doesn't have to be the same one. If you feel like the brightness, this doesn't work, again, change it, right? So always keep in mind that, keep in mind where the shadows are. If you have a mountain that's on the shadow side, you're obviously going to want to drop that brightness. So it's important to keep in mind where everything is. If you don't, we're not going to do structures, so I won't do that, but I'll add some last thing. We're going to add in some trees, okay? Because you're wondering, well, how do I add trees to this thing? Okay, so make sure it's a layer above. This thing's at -1, and these are at layer 1, so you want to make sure that the trees are at layer 2, and the opacity has to be at 100%. I think I accidentally had these two at the wrong opacity. Let's just fix that real quick. Okay, boom. All right, now we'll add those trees. Okay. All right, and we're going to go with something small. Okay, these are quite large trees if you compare them to the mountain, but again, it's just the limitations of the tool. So just kind of keep that in mind. Put these trees at the base. Okay, I wouldn't put them higher up here unless you wanted to. That would be more like alpine. So you would have more coniferous trees if you wanted to put them higher up here in this kind of alpine region. Okay, and again, you can also use these trees to kind of hide some line work that looks weird or not right. So, if you can't get something to work, cheat, hide it. This is something that a lot of artists do. Okay, like it's just the objective for you is to create less work for yourself. So instead of trying some advanced technique to try to make something look good, cheat, hide something, hide it with a stamp, hide it with a clipping mask. Okay, so make your life easier and go with steps and techniques that speed up the process, make your life easier. Okay, and you can find a lot of techniques and stuff from a lot of our EA users. You can go to our Discord. I'm pretty sure that link has been added already. Look for that. If not, then one of the moderators can add that. Or you can go to any one of the moderators in the chat's profile pages. You can deconstruct maps that were made, provided they're clonable, and that you have the pro subscription, okay? And then also go to my profile too if you want to look for future guides on how to do a lot of this stuff, because I try to make as many guides as possible so people know how to do this stuff, including the streams. So again, we're going to group it all, okay? And so this is basically where your start is, and you can make multiple ones too. I recommend that you make multiple floating islands because they look really cool together when they're close together. Obviously, these are the same one, so when you're making each one, you're probably going to want to make them a bit different, otherwise it looks odd. So just kind of keep that in mind. The last bit I would recommend for floating islands is shadows, okay? And there are a lot of ways to do shadows. You can just go with a texture, that's the easiest way. Use that dark color here, or you can use a path, BG, okay, or FG, sorry. And we're going to want to make sure that you drop the opacity when you're making a shadow, okay? Because you don't want it to be too dark, otherwise it's going to look weird. So if I go like this, it's just too dark, okay? So drop the opacity a little bit, and just underneath, make the shadow. Now just know that the farther away the shadow is from the ground is how it denotes how high up it is. Okay, so if I was to put the shadow right here, obviously this is not very high up, okay? So the farther the shadow is away from the base of the floating island, the more higher up that it is. So keep that in mind, okay? So if I put the shadow right here, like this, and you don't have to do anything ridiculously detailed. Just a regular circle is just fine. You don't have to worry about making something complex. You can make it as complex as you want. Okay, that's up to you. All right. Okay, let's take that away. This one's higher up, so it's going to be a little bit farther down, okay? All right. Keep that in mind, okay? And then the last one is up here. It's about the same height as this one, so we'll go ahead and put it here. It's going to be a bit smaller, okay? So that is how you do your floating islands, okay? You'll want to piece them together using mountains, use the transform tool, okay? Add on whatever stamps you want. You don't have to add trees. It can be completely devoid of trees. That's up to you, okay? Once you've pieced all your things together, compose your islands in the way that you want. You want to make them like an archipelago of floating islands. You can do that, piece them, chain them together, but don't forget to do your shadows, because that's what's going to make it look like, oh, it's floating, all right? And I just put the shadows directly underneath, okay? Because we're just making it like all the other shadows in the fantasy world style. You notice the shadows are directly above. They're not being cast like the fantasy regional style, where there's a baked-in shadow that's projecting in a certain direction. This is a shadow just straight down, and that's perfectly fine because you're dealing with the shadows that are baked into these stamps, okay? So keep that in mind when you're doing your shadow work. You don't have to worry about making this complex shadow hit against another mountain or somewhere. Just do the shadow straight down, so that way you keep continuity with the shadows that are baked into the stamps, okay? So kind of keep that in mind. All right, so let's go ahead and save. We've done 106 changes. Just going to check it on the chat, see how things are doing. All right, okay. So we've done floating islands, and we're still quite a bit behind, only 30 minutes before the stream is technically to end, so this will last just a hair longer, okay? Let's jump right into an archipelago, okay? So you have your archipelago, okay? So an archipelago is a series of islands that creates an island chain, okay? Now this is technically on the background. This is on the BG layer, okay, the background layer. First things first is we want to choose our base texture. So B key, F key, pick your water texture that you like. You're going to choose whatever one you want. I'm just going to go ahead and choose this water green, okay? And you're going to go ahead and make sure that you got the right layer selected. Again, you can use your, I think it's A, let me see, let me check here. It's 1 and 2, right? 1 and 2 to switch between, okay? So 1 FG, B2 is BG, okay? And we're going to go ahead and use this square brush and increase the opacity. And I'm going to go ahead and just use this rectangle shape to fill it in. Okay, so you've got your entire thing filled in. You notice that it's on the BG. If I go to select, press apply, it doesn't work on this one. Okay, so now there's your base textures, because an archipelago is mostly going to be ocean or sea. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and use our, let's take a look here. Add minus, let's use our add mode. Let's just verify that it works right. Okay. Now you're going to notice that line work is dark. You can change that in your settings, okay? So just keep in mind that you can do that. Now, there's one thing you should know about these advanced settings, these stroke effects and everything, is that it's going to affect every single thing made with the add mode, okay? So if you were to, let's say, add a ripple effect, okay? You're going to notice that ripple effect is going to be on everything, okay, that's created with the add mode of the mask tool. So there is no, I can select one area to have mask effects and then another area or another landmass to have different mask effects. We don't have that option. That doesn't exist. So just know that your mask effects are going to be universal, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind when you're making your map, okay? Let's go ahead and turn off that ripple effect. I don't mind that the shoreline has this dark line work on it. That's fine, because you can change that. So I'm just kind of showing you how things work. I'm just going to undo the thing that I made, okay? All right, so you're going to want to start with your add mode, okay? We're going to make sure our smoothing is on. We're going to drop our edge brush size to 3, okay? Make sure that brush size is small, okay? And we're going to create one larger landmass first, okay? Instead of creating a bunch of little islands and then trying to make sure they look natural, you just create one large island first, okay? So you've got this one large island like this, okay? You're just going to fill it in, okay, like this. So just let it go and you'll see. Okay, so there's that, okay? Now you're going to go to your subtract mode, which you're going to press the D key. I think it's D and A. So A key is the add mode. D key is the subtract mode. So A and D, so keep those in mind, okay? So subtract mode, we're also going to drop the size to where it's fairly small, okay? And what you're going to do is you're just going to go like this, okay? Just kind of this is just your first pass, okay? We're going to take a look at it. All right, so now you have your islands. Now you're going to start with another smaller brush, maybe just go to 5, okay? And now you're going to start to carve out these shapes. So we want to get rid of a couple of these islands. Let's get rid of this one. Doesn't look good. Get rid of that one. Let's get rid of this one, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to create some negative space in between these islands, okay? So you just delete a couple of them that you created. I like that. Let's keep that. And you're also going to shape other ones, okay? So you're shaping it, all right? Let's go ahead and connect these two, make them look kind of nice together. Okay, same thing here, just make it go like this. Okay, so you're having a series of islands like this. We're breaking things up to kind of make it do that. It's so much easier than taking the add mode and trying to create all these various island shapes. Just take a larger landmass and just in changing, your brush size, decreasing as you go with each stroke. That way you can add in some details, okay? So we're going to go ahead and break up some parts here. And what you're doing is you're going to create some interesting land mass shapes. I recommend a couple things. One, you can make a bay. Like these are kind of like a bay, okay, or an inlet. And then you can also create what's called a horn. So like this right here is a horn. This is a horn right here. We can add in some more of that too. Let's break this up. Okay, and what we're doing, we're going to create some smaller islands too, okay? So just some smaller ones. And just kind of delete the ones that don't look good. And so our archipelago is kind of coming together. Let's go ahead and delete everything on this side because I don't want to maintain that shape. Create a little bit of curve here. Let's also delete this one, okay? Or just kind of remove some of this one. Okay, there we go. Now we're kind of creating this nice shape here, okay? So you have this nice shape. Now once you've kind of created that, you can start thinking about what you want each little island to be, like what texture you're going to use. So let's go ahead and just go to the catalog, kind of pick one that we want. Let's go ahead and pick this light green. I kind of like it. We're going to go ahead and place it. And just to make sure that it looks good first, I'm going to get rid of my softness. I'm going to apply it to the FG, so you want to press 1. Okay. Oopsie, accidentally went over to here. Don't want to do that. You can also just do this shape thing that we did before, like this. And it will select everything. And I don't really care much for that color. I think it's a little too bright against this bright water. So let's just pick something a bit darker, or I can just go to filters and just drop the brightness. Okay, we can do that. And so we'll do this just to kind of make it, see how that looks. Oh yeah, that's a little bit better. I kind of like that. And then once you've kind of added that, you can start thinking about what's going to go on each island. Because this is so small, I'm just going to decorate some of it and not all of it. I just want to give you a general idea on how to make those shapes. You know, again, just a large island, one large shape, and then from there, just you sculpt it out. Okay, just like as if you were a sculptor with a piece of stone. You see the overall shape that you want, you chisel that out, and then you just remove what you don't want, because it's a lot easier than adding to it, okay? Much, much easier to just make one large blob and then break it up, okay? So just keep that in mind. Next thing we're going to do is just add in a couple mountains and some stuff in there to kind of make this look nice. So we're going to want to pick a mountain of choice, and I'm going to choose the green, and I'm also going to change the brightness as well. Okay, and we're going to think about the size here. These are quite small islands, so let's just put some small mountain ranges in. One thing you want to do is you want to overlap That meaning you want the peak of the mountain to go over the shoreline just a little bit so that it creates this feeling of depth. And I've mentioned this in all of my streams. Overlap is a huge deal. I recommend you do it. Okay? So we're going to create all this overlap. We're going to create a couple ranges. There's one range there. Maybe we can create another one over here. Again, you want to create that overlap. Okay? Overlap is super important. Okay. And I'm going to just pretend like this chain kind of continues on onto the next island. Okay? And then we'll have the chain go over to here like this. So we'll add one more here. Okay, there we go. So the chain kind of goes like this, and we'll have it over here too. We'll add one more chain right here. And we will probably change up some of the textures a bit to where it matches, because usually you're not going to hit the perfect texture that you want right away. That's why you have a base texture, so that you can kind of change things up. Okay. So we'll go into the texture catalog, and we're going to pick some stuff that maybe might go well. So let's experiment. Let's bring the softness up, drop the opacity, and texturing is a bit of an experiment, so you're going to have to do that. So just kind of look. We're going to pick kind of a texture that might go well with it. I want to keep some of this brown, this darker green. Okay, you want to keep some of your base texture. Okay. So that way it kind of shows up a little bit because it looks nice. Okay. We're going to add a little bit here, a little bit there. Okay. All right. So there are a couple things. I know that this black looks really awkward, but you can change that color too if you wanted to. There are a couple ways to deal with that. You can change the stroke to, let's say you want like a sandy color. So you might want to change, obviously, the opacity, or even change the brightness if you want to a different color. So go experiment with what colors that you kind of want for your shorelines. Okay, right? So you see there's some shoreline here, so that's one way to do it. You can also work on your ripple effect. Okay, you'll see that there are some ripples here. Obviously, it looks awkward with the way that the map is set up, but you get the general idea. Okay, you can also add some outer shadows. Okay, all right. All right, we're going to go here. And we're going to drop the blur down. And what this does basically is kind of create your shallow water. Okay? So like if you want shallow water, this is the way to kind of do that. Make sure it's a lighter color. Okay? Use like a light blue or a white at a low opacity. Okay? So that's another way to kind of help your shoreline. Okay? I'm going to turn that off and not use it because I'm going to show you another technique as well. Let's go ahead and change up this stroke a little bit. In fact, we can just get rid of it. We don't even need it. No, we do actually. Oh, that's what it looks like without stroke. Just want you to know that if you want, you can use no stroke at all. Okay, and then you can paint in. So I'll quickly show that as well. Okay, so you go over to your brush tool, F, and you want to choose a texture that's light, much lighter. Okay, you could even choose the one we've already used. Right, make sure it's set to the BG. Filters, and maybe bring up the brightness a bit. Okay. Again, don't use the edgy brush if you're going to paint your water. I've mentioned that before. Leave the size small, softness all the way up, zoom in, and what you're going to do is your crosshairs are going to be what you're going to follow along your edge. Okay. So if I go like this, just do one pass like this. Okay. And you'll kind of notice it's a little bit lighter. Okay, so this is what we're using to create shallow water. Okay, now this way works really well because if you want, you can push the shallow out. Unlike using the mask tool, you can't push shallow waters any farther. Okay, so when you're doing with a brush, you can push shallow waters farther out. Okay, because obviously when you're using a mask setting, it's only going to hug to the shoreline. It isn't going to go farther out. So if you wanted this, let's say this area right here to be all shallows right here, you wouldn't be able to do that without texturing. So it just depends on how much detail and how much time that you have on your map. If you have time to add a little bit to paint in your shorelines, then do that. If you're running on a tight schedule, you have a campaign to do or whatever it is you're doing, then yeah, you're probably going to want to just use the mask effects, okay? But know that there are limitations with using it, okay? So just kind of keep all that in mind when you're making your map. Okay, so here you have that nice kind of edge right there, so it's super nice. You can go into even more detail if you want. You can increase the brightness even more, okay? And then just drop the brush size and go even smaller to kind of create that shoreline right there. Let's go up to, let's say 3, okay? So you can do this as well. So it just depends how much detail you want to go into. I'll just do one island for now. You can take a look at it, okay? This is kind of creating this illusion of where there is going to be some surf. So that's basically what we're creating here is surf by adding this extra little bright ring around it. So you have shallow water and then this bright one again, surf, okay? I'm only going to do it to 1 because you get the general idea. I'll just go ahead and do it to the other islands off screen after the stream so you get the general idea, okay? Also, don't make the mistake of doing it all the way around the mountain either. Do it behind it, okay? So don't make the mistake I made right there. But you get the general idea, right? That lighter blue is going to be your surf, and that other blue going out is your shallow water, okay? So kind of keep all that in mind. You can take the original texture and drop the brightness if you want to create this illusion of depth, okay? So those negative spaces, like out here and here, that is where your deep water is going to be, okay? So just go ahead and add your darker, the texture that you've just changed with the settings to make it a little bit darker, okay? And just use, for now, just go with one pass, one whole pass. Get that whole negative area, okay, covered. A little bit here too, okay? All right? And then you can do it again one more time to add the darkest area in here, okay? In here as well. We'll make this area nice and dark. Do it again. You want to get it nice and dark. These dark areas. Okay, sweet. All right, you guys are getting a general idea. So that's pretty much your archipelago, okay? Right, and if you go back to stroke, you'll kind of notice that you'll see that dark, that kind of shoreline that we've added there, okay? You can also paint in that shoreline if you don't want to, but I just wanted to show you what it looked like, okay? You can turn that stroke off. If you prefer not to have that, it's up to you how much detail you want to go into your shorelines. Do you want to paint it in? Because with your stroke for your shoreline, unfortunately, it's universal. It's going to cover every single one, right? Okay? But if you just want certain areas to have shoreline while others don't, you're going to have to paint, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind, okay? That you will be stuck with painting. I'll quickly just paint a couple areas to kind of show you what I mean, okay? So you're going to want to obviously go with a very, very small brush for this particular one, okay? And let's just say that you want a beach to be, and make sure it's set to FG, so click 1, okay? Let's just say you just want this area right here to have a beach, and you don't want the rest of it to have a beach. This is what you would do, right? You go in, and you kind of make your little passes in here, and you have a nice little shoreline there. Same thing here, you want a little shoreline here, okay? Let's say that a lot of this is cliff, right? But you can't see it, right? So you just want some shoreline and some of it to have no shoreline whatsoever. It's a cliff. So we'll add that here as well, okay? So this is basically how you get those shorelines into very specific places, okay? So just know that using the stroke, again, I say this, using the stroke options comes with limitations, okay? So if you just want an isolated beach where there's no other sand, then turn off your stroke and instead paint it, okay? Those are your options, and think about those, okay? Quickly save this. I'm going to hop into the chat, take a look, see if people need any help. People are doing great. All right, sweet. Yeah, don't forget to ask Philip any questions if you have any. That's why he's here in the chat. Also, don't forget to scroll up the chat and look for his profile page with us. Absolutely incredible maps. Been making some great gothic horror stuff. I recommend you go to the profile and check that out. You can also scroll up and see my profile as well. I have tons of guides, tutorials, and other stuff on there. I've also been making a series of terrain templates. That means basically land shapes that you can just use that has roads mountains, has all the vegetation and everything. All you have to do is just place down your structures. I'll make sure to go ahead and put that link in the description at the end of the video. Let's not waste any more time. We still have 4 more biomes to do, and it's going to take a little longer than 15 minutes. So here's your archipelago, as you can see, and we're going to add one more element, trees, okay? Just going to do that real quick. We'll add in some quick trees just so that we have something besides just mountains, okay? And we're just going to quickly apply just some trees here, like this. Put them at the base of the mountain if you want, or whatever it is you want to do. But do some single clicks. I don't want them to be too close to the shoreline, okay? Because that's obviously where the beach is going to be. But I'm just going to put some stuff on some of these islands so you can kind of see. And also don't forget to put on some hills, or you can put in entirely different stuff. Some of these karsts right here look really nice, so maybe on these smaller islands you can place some of these karsts, and they do look pretty cool. So let's place a bunch on there. Put one there. Okay, put one there. And you'll notice that there are some small artifacts with the brush tool, right? With the mask tool, you might have to break those up. So we'll get to that in a minute. First, let's just kind of add some karsts on these smaller islands. I'm going to scroll through. And what I like to do with it is just pick like a larger one as kind of the centerpiece. So let's just say this is the large one. Then just scroll through and pick the smaller ones, right? Or scale them down if you wish. If you want to do that, you can do that too. Okay, and have them overlap a little bit. Have one be in front of it, one be behind it, so that way it looks nice. Okay, and we're also going to quickly subtract with our circle brush, not our edgy brush, because the edgy brush works on kind of a grid of its own with these little shapes like this, and sometimes when you do things, some artifacts remain, so you have to delete them. It's not really that big of a deal. There's just a couple of them here and there you have to get rid of. There's one there, you'll see a point there, some there. Go through and kind of just do a final pass with your islands to kind of get rid of those little artifacts, okay? They don't generally show up too often, so you can it's easier to remove them if you don't have your edge on, if you have that non-edge shape like this. If you have your smoothing off and on, that will have an effect on that, so just kind of keep that in mind. Okay? So we're just going to fix those little artifacts. Yeah, this is a weird shape right here. We'll get rid of that. Okay? So there's your archipelago with your islands and some karsts. Okay? Lots of options there. We're going to save and move on to the next 4. I'll try to move quickly in these because there's still a lot to do. Yeah, just a little mad. If you blink, things get done quick. Okay. What is next on the agenda? A wasteland. Okay. Let's go do a wasteland. Okay. A wasteland is somewhat similar to a desert, but I'm not going to go with a desert. I'm actually going to go with something different. Let's maybe go with maybe a different texture. Let's type in wasteland. Waste. Okay. So we have a series of wasteland textures to use from. There's a bunch of red ones, and there's some here. I think these are from Fantasy Regional. I really like these. These work really well. Let's go ahead and select one, and let's also go to filters and just kind of mess with the saturation so where it's not too super bright red. So kind of drop the saturation, kind of give it a pink, and then bring up the contrast, because what that's going to do is bring out the artifacts, these kind of little parts right here. Contrast is going to bring out those artifacts. I like that. Okay, and we're going to make sure it's set to the right layer. We're going to use that box technique again. Go over like this. Okay, and we'll press enter. Okay, and you kind of have that texture there. I think it's a little too saturated, so we're going to go back and go up a little bit more. We want just a little bit of red in there. Oh, I see. It's set at the wrong opacity. That's the problem. There we go. Okay. So there's kind of our wasteland texture right there. That looks kind of nice. And we're going to go ahead and pick some stamps that we want to choose to go well with a wasteland. I would recommend craters, some cracks, things like that. So object tool, F key to go to the catalog. We're going to expand all. And sometimes you don't know what you're going to create. So sometimes it's okay to just scroll down through the catalog, let it load, and just kind of go through the various options and see what you have to work with. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. I haven't done a lot of cliff work, so let's go ahead and use cliffs, okay, to create some depth. I haven't done this in the other terrain videos, so let's jump on that. Okay, so it's just like your walls with your fantasy battle maps. You have to piece these kind of cliffs together to kind of get the shape that you want. And you don't have to add a lot if you don't want to. You really just need to scroll through and just make a couple shapes, okay? Just make a couple, right? So you have this kind of ridge right here. It's kind of a rock shelf. So you're just gonna make a series of rock shelves, and you don't have to make it perfect. Just throw down a bunch at first, okay? That's the first thing, is just make a couple first, and then you can kind of rotate them and move them around. Don't worry about making your shape right now. It's not going to be perfect. I guarantee you that when you first put these down, you're not going to be satisfied with what you come up with. So just kind of put things together first, and then we can kind of decide where we want these pieces to go, okay? And also, the more that you do this, the more you get used to laying down cliffs and stuff, the better you'll get at it, the more efficient, and you'll kind of gonna get a feel for it. So you kind of have to get this quote-unquote sixth sense for it after you've done it a number of times, okay? This also includes lining up your line work, okay? So when you're doing your stamps, you're clearly gonna wanna line up the line work on these stamps with other stamps. So I'll give you an example. So you kind of have this stamp right here, and you'll notice that I'm gonna line up the line work here. Right here, you'll see these line works lining up, okay? Lining up, line work is perfect because it creates continuity with stamps, okay? And that's kind of what you want. You kind of want some continuity, okay? And I'm also going to show you one other trick on how to make a quick little, kind of a island made of rock, okay? So we'll zoom in real quick, and we're going to piece these two together like this, okay? And you're going to have to rotate and kind of size them to where the line work matches up. So you've kind of created this plateau rock right here. I definitely recommend that you group it, okay? And it's nice to put them up against spaces like this, so it kind of looks like there's like a little ridge, or kind of a ridge right here. So, and you can copy and paste these, which is super nice. And you can also edit them to where you can edit the group, and then you can flip and rotate both of them like this, so you have kind of a different shape. So one right there, and we'll add one right here, and then we'll add another one right over here, up on top, up here like this, or over here. Let's take a look here. What works best? Maybe let's zoom out, see our options, and then maybe put one out here. Okay, so you have a series of rock shelves, okay? And these stamps seem to work fairly well. This is just our base stamp. So if we want, we can blend more together. So, and we kind of have these nice cracks in the texture already, so it's kind of nice. We don't have to create these fissures and cracks that are there with stamps. It's already kind of there with the texture, or it's already there in the texture, because remember, you want to do less work. Instead of going through the catalog and putting a bunch of cracks and crevices, it's actually a lot easier if you just pick a texture that has all the cracks and crevices in it. Clearly you're going to want to edit that texture with rotating and the size and the scale and everything to kind of fit it to where you want it to work, okay? So just know that less work is better, okay? Use textures. Textures have all these great artifacts. That means less work for you. That's the objective. You want to do less work for you, especially if you're DM. You don't have enough time to make this, 30, 40 hour map for a campaign that you have going on. Instead, you've only got like an hour or a couple days to kind of piece together, these maps. So find the techniques and the strategy and kind of the order of operation that's going to speed up your map making. Don't worry about making a map in just like a matter of hours. Just worry about just shaving off what your current time is. So make a map, see how much time it takes you to make it, time that, see how long it is, and then start formulating tactics, techniques, order of operation that's going to speed up that process, shave off 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, to the point where it maybe cuts your time in half. So when it took you, let's say, 3 hours to make a map, now it only takes you an hour and a half. Okay? That's the most realistic goal that you could set for yourself instead of trying to make this incredible, beautiful map in just a matter of a couple hours. That is probably not going to happen. So be realistic about your goals. And just so you know, when I first make a map, I hate it for the first couple hours. Like this thing right here, I can't stand it. I don't think it looks good. But as I continue to add more things and to kind of piece it together, it'll start to grow on you, okay? So this is the reason why I bring this up is because it's so easy to work on something and then just to kind of give up because you're just not satisfied with it, okay? That is natural. That is going to happen. You are not going to like what you've created within the first couple minutes or even half hour or even hour of creating, okay? You're going to be dissatisfied. So instead of giving up, add things to it to make it better so that it kind of begins to rub off on you, okay? Because I've got tons of projects in my map gallery where there's all these maps that I started and I didn't finish. And as soon as I incorporated this kind of technique of just, bearing with it and keep going and don't give up, then it began to grow on me, and then the number of maps, unfinished maps, began to diminish, okay? So make sure that you just kind of keep that in mind. That's a serious pro tip. I absolutely recommend it, okay? So don't get discouraged, okay? Just keep going. Keep trucking, all right? Don't give up. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and add some textures just to kind of blend in this, okay? And we're going to use a brown texture, or you can just kind of select all these and press luminosity. It just depends on how you want it to be. If I click select luminosity, you'll notice that it picks up that color, okay? Obviously, I have some groups, so I need to unselect those groups. One thing you can do is if you want to quickly or easily select something, go to your select tool and you're going to notice an array of options here, okay? You'll also notice an option to enable layer selection filter, so you can only pick up things on certain layers, okay? And there's also these selections here, and there's also one other thing that you can also do as well. If you select a stamp, go to the hamburger menu, you're going to notice the select, and it says select all stamps like this. So if I select that, okay, it will select all the stamps that are like that, or it should. It doesn't look like it did. Not sure why it did that. Let's try it again. Select all stamps. Oh, let's go from the set. There we go. Sorry. Okay, and so all the stamps have been selected, and you're going to go over to your normal blend mode luminosity, okay? Now, unfortunately, these groups, they're no longer just regular stamps or groups. You have to open them. You can ungroup all of them if you want. Now that you've kind of placed them all, you can ungroup them and then just go right here and do the same thing. Go to select all from the set. All will be selected again. Luminosity. Okay, and all are selected. And if you feel like it blends too much and it's not dark enough, again, you can go ahead and change the brightness. That way you can add a little bit more shadow, a little bit harder, a little bit more darker here where these cliff ledges or edges are right here, okay? So that's something you can do if it doesn't match up. Let's go ahead and change where they all are, okay? Let's go ahead and pick a texture of our choice. Let's just choose the same texture that I've been using, okay? And what I'm going to do is just go over to filters and just change the brightness, okay? And we are going to go with the edgy brush, okay? Smooth, down to the smallest size, 3. Make sure it's set to the right layer. It should be BG. We can verify that by just applying. There you go, like that, as you can see. Okay, and we do want to drop the opacity, as always with the edgy brush. Your opacity, excuse me, your opacity should be about anywhere between, depending on how dark the texture is, about 15 to 30%, okay? That's just kind of a general rule of thumb. And we're going to increase the size. And what I'm going to do is I want these dark ledges right here to kind of blend in more, because it kind of looks like they're floating just a hair. So the way that I do that is, again, you just take your edgy brush, go in here like this, and just kind of go at the base. Make sure it doesn't accidentally go up onto the top where the top of it is, because you want to leave that light, okay? That's going to give the contrast that you need, okay? So do not accidentally, with your darker version of this texture, go onto the top, okay, with the apex, okay? Just stay at the base, Okay, that's just where we want to go, because we want a distinguishable difference between the base and the top, the apex. Okay, keep that in mind. Okay, and you can just make it lighter at the top. We can do that. In fact, we'll just not worry about that and just kind of apply the texture. Okay, and I'll show you what I mean. So we're just kind of going to make it to where these blend in better. Okay. I like that dark texture. It kind of goes well with that base. We can even increase the opacity even more. Okay, there we go. Okay, and we're going to continue to add this kind of here. All right, there. Looking nice, much better. Okay, here. Okay, now once you've done that, you can go ahead and start to do to texture the top up here. Okay, and again, you're just going to take that texture that you've been using and just kind of increase the brightness a bit. Okay, and this time we're not going to use the edgy brush because I don't want it to bleed outside of the line work. So the way to fix that problem is just, you could just use the softness brush and drop the size down. Let's just do one pass just to kind of see how it looks real quick. Okay, yeah, there we go. Okay, there you go. And so now you've kind of got this nice contrast with this dark ground, and the apex is kind of this lighter texture, so it kind of creates this depth. And you're going to do it to all of the little islands or the little plateau rocks that we've created with cliffs. So start with those first, okay? Start with those first, okay? And then we'll move on to the next part, okay? So you've kind of done these islands here, okay? And the next part is just to go along the edge, okay? So if it's right here, I'm going to start here and just go all along this edge. Okay, so along that edge, don't be afraid to stick it out a little bit and to put in just a couple single clicks. And then again, put the edge here along this one, go all the way, like this, okay? Just do some single clicks because we're going to create some blending, okay? And you're going to do that same thing up here to this ledge right here, okay? It's okay to accidentally go over where the cliff is right here, that's okay. All right, and we're going to go in just a little bit, going in, even here, then add a couple here like this, okay? So there is kind of your wasteland with your texturing. Let's quickly save, we'll add in some real quick vegetation, and then we'll move on to the next one. Sweet. Yes, Withered Rogue, you nailed it. Never give up. You can do it. Excuse me. Okay. Next, jungle pool. Oh, sweet. Let's go ahead and add that vegetation real quick. Let's go with these dead trees. I just kind of assume right away that it's kind of a wasteland, so you're probably not going to find a lot of healthy trees. I mean, you can, if you want, you can put a little oasis in here somewhere. I've done that with deserts, but strategically, let's place trees. It's the tactic always remains the same. Start with one size that you like first, and don't forget the overlapping things. So you can put one, let's say, my computer is lagging quite a bit. There we go. Put one on top, put a couple on top, put a couple up here, put one there, overlap. It's that overlap thing that kind of creates that illusion of depth, okay? So just start with on top first, okay? A couple on top here, a couple here, and then you can start with putting them in front of the cliff, like this, all right? And you've done, this overlapping technique works absolute wonders when you want to create depth, so just put a couple there with that one size that you already have, and then you can just put a couple randomly or in the negative space, okay? Then you're going to go ahead and drop down the size, okay? Make it significantly smaller so you can see there's an obvious difference in the size. And you're just going to place them around where your big trees are at, okay? Because what you're doing is creating a little bit of clusters, creating a little bit of natural effect, okay? Me personally, in my own, vernacular, I call it the monotony of size issue. where it's just all the trees look the same size, or the hills or the mountains, and it just looks weird. So to kind of break up that quote-unquote monotony of size issue, you just kind of add in some smaller variations, you know, of that same stamp, so that way it doesn't look all weird. So now you've added those trees in, okay? All right, and there's one last bit that we want to do that I think that would be kind of nice. We can add in one more texture that's going to kind of create, I'm going to fill in these negative spaces with another texture real quick, and it's going to be different, okay? So we might want to explore, kind of look at our options here. It's set to waste, so let's turn that off. Let's see what our options are here, okay? I kind of like this brown grass one. I'm just going to add one stroke and drop the opacity and just kind of see how it looks at first, just to see what we're working with here. Okay. Yeah, that works okay. Let's go with that for now, and we can use the edgy brush. That's fine. Let's go with edgy. Drop the opacity down. Okay. All right. So I'm going to try to go into the negative spaces without, and I'm not going to hit any trees. Okay. I want that base texture to stay at the base of the trees. Okay. So we're just going around like this. Okay. You can do it again. Again, don't forget, try to leave these trees with the red, that red texture, okay? And what I'm doing is kind of creating like the main kind of area and walkways in which your kind of characters can walk through. That's why I'm applying this texture here like this. So this is kind of like the walkways. You go in through here. We'll put a walkway that goes in through here like this, okay? Just kind of keep adding it as you go. What we're trying to do is kind of make this look like a dirt kind of walk area or a road, okay? So now you have this nice texture here. Great, so now people can walk through these areas right here like this, okay? Don't forget to just add a couple in here as well, because there's this strange edge here. You want to break that up just a hair, okay? Same thing with that edge. Break that edge up, break that edge up, and we'll put a little bit here too, okay? Sweet. All right, so there's your wasteland. I am going to save. The next one's going to be a jungle pool. Yay, I'm excited about that. This one looks like it's probably going to go to about 1, unfortunately, but that's just the way it is. Okay, we still got a lot of people watching. I'm glad you guys are here. Awesome. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into jungle pool. Okay, and I'm going to, as always, when you're doing your biome, start immediately with the kind of texture that you want to use. I kind of like this swamp right here. I'm not doing any other swamp, so let's just do this jungle. It's a bit faded out, so let's go to hue or placement, and we're going to increase the saturation to where it's just a little bit brighter. Okay, I want that jungle color to be nice, and let's go ahead and change the brightness. There we go. We're now on the FG layer. Okay, let's go ahead and use that rectangle brush. Press enter. Oopsie, don't forget you're at the wrong opacity, so press enter. There you go. So now you have this nice texture right here, and we're going to use that one to make our jungle pool. First thing I would do is not add stamps, okay? If you're going to make like a lake or something, obviously mountains are a good start, but if you don't have any mountains and you want to make a jungle pool or a pool or a lake or whatever, I would recommend you make the body of water first. So subtract mode, and we're going to go ahead and make our basic shape first. So let's say you want our jungle pool to be relatively small. It doesn't have to be big, okay? Here's our jungle pool. Okay, and we're going to fill it in, and we're going to pick our color, okay? All right, nice shape here, looking good. You can also texture in your water sources. Your water, it's just up to you. I think the most basic way of making water, though, is with the subtract mode against the foreground layer, the FG layer. So FG layer here, BG layer here. FG, BG, okay? Go to brush, B key, F key to open the catalog. And we're going to pick the kind of color that we want this to be. I'm not entirely sure. Let's just go with maybe one of these. There's this water gray. Okay, we can try that. Let's just apply it and see how it looks. Just going to put it here over the whole thing. Press BG, press enter. Okay, there we go. Take a look at it real quick, just see how it looks. Okay, that looks all right. Let's go ahead and move on to the next step. The next step is to go ahead and add your stamps. I'm not going to add any mountains, but I will add some hills. Okay, I'm going to have to refresh the page soon. Let's go ahead and pick the hill that we want. Let's go with a different stamp. We've been using these ones. Let's go ahead and use these ones, a different set this time. Okay, and I'm going to do something different. I'm also going to just use the transform tool. Okay, and we're going to make these kind of pointed kind of hills. So I'm going to put one there in that corner there, and let's go ahead and make sure that the transform tool is right. The height is right. Okay, this is kind of nice because the hills are kind of a little flat, but when you add this the transform tool, you kind of get these nice pointy kind of tall hills, and I really like that. So that's just something you can kind of do. And don't forget to overlap. Okay, you make sure that that hill is overlapping the shoreline so that you can kind of see that there's some depth there, and we're going to apply that same concept too. Don't forget. Let's go ahead and make them a little bit smaller and add in some smaller shallow hills. Okay, these are a little bit shallow, they're not tall, but if you want them all to be tall, you can. I'm just kind of adding in some smaller variations there, so we can kind of select these if we want. I was just kind of thinking that there would be a couple tall ones and then the rest of them would be the normal kind of thing, and that would look kind of nice together. Okay, so now you've got some features here. Okay, don't worry, we will blend in those hills. Okay, so don't worry about that. We'll get there. First, let's go ahead and add some trees. And also, if you want like a little island to be in the jungle pool, you can. One of the fun tricks you can do for making islands, lake islands, or just an island in general, is that you can just take basically a hill and just place it wherever you want. Okay, so place it wherever you want. I am going to do the transform tool to where there's going to be this, and we're going to rotate it, I think. No, the shadow will be off. So let's actually pick a different stamp for our hill. Let's go with this one. This one will do fine. So we'll select it, click it, put it there, and we're going to go ahead and make it tall. Okay, and then you're going to place it kind of where you want it. Okay, you can put it here, anywhere you want it is fine. Okay, I'll put mine over, let's say over here. This should look good. Okay, and you're going to take the add mode of the mask tool. So the M for the mask tool, 1 and 2, A and D, I think it is, A and D, to switch over. So A is the add mode, D is the subtract mode. You want the add mode. Do not use your edgy brush, use your regular circle shape. Make it small, okay? And all you're doing is just making the shape of the island, and you're using the hill as a guide. It's actually easier to place the stamp and then to kind of make your island like this than it is to do the other way around, because let's say that you put the landmass down first, right? And you can't fit the hill on. Then you have to adjust the hill, okay? So if you put the hill or whatever, the mountain or whatever you're using, put that down first and then do the add mode. That way you can kind of tailor the island to match around the shape of the stamp, okay? So just kind of a pro tip for the future. If you're making islands and there's a mountain on it, you can do that. I didn't obviously do that here with archipelagos, but for this one it works well because it's just one. So there's that, keep that in mind, okay? So then the next step will be to add some trees, and for yourself you can decide what you want. For structures, I would assume there'd be just a really nice village that you could put here. It's kind of a nice little village. So we have a jungle pool. Let's go ahead and add trees. We're going to pick jungle trees and we're going to surround the entire spot with jungle trees. So these are jungle trees right here. I'm going to make them a little bit bigger, okay? Jungle trees are big. And I'm going to go ahead and place one down and see how they look with that texture. Okay, we're going to go to filters. Let's go ahead and just change things up a bit. I'm going to change the saturation so where it's not so much. And we're going to drop the contrast, actually bring it up just a hair, and change the brightness just a little bit. Okay, so you have your options for your jungle tree here, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to encase the whole thing with trees, okay? Now, generally, a jungle is very, very thick with trees, okay? So if you're going to make a jungle, it's usually going to be so thick that you can't even see anything in it. That's just how dense, at least rainforests are. They're super dense, okay? So kind of keep that in mind. But for the sake of a map, if you want to show a POI inside of a jungle, you're going to have to create a glade, okay? That, or you're going to have to create a structure that's at the same layer as this one, and I'll show you real quick just to kind of show you. This is kind of a heads up. I know I'm using a structure here. I shouldn't be using structures, but I just want to give you this heads up that if you want your jungle to be more realistic and you don't want to deal with the creating a glade, you can just put a stamp right there once you place it in and maybe push it up a layer. Let's just go ahead and move it down here and take a look. Okay, so you can do this like this, you see. Let's go ahead and go to transform and increase the height. So if you want, you can do this thing where you have like a structure sticking out of the foliage if you want. Okay, that's one way of going about it. But honestly, if you want a POI to show up in a jungle where it's just so dense, I definitely would just recommend just making a glade. And a glade is just an open space in a forest where the sunlight can penetrate and get to, okay? It's just an opening. So let's go ahead and just apply the trees here. Make sure I have it on the right layer too. I think I might, okay, we're on the right layer. So we're gonna basically put this entire area with trees in the negative space around, okay? And for now, just make a frame around the whole thing, okay? Just your start, okay? And then from there, you can add in some single-click trees to change up the density. And then also don't forget that monotony of size issue. So now that you've placed that down, now you can go with smaller trees. Again, small enough to where it's a noticeable difference in size. And again, do that overlap. Overlap those hills, overlap over the lake where the shoreline is, overlap, overlap, overlap. Can't stress it enough. Keep doing it. Okay? So we're going to add in some smaller trees. We want to break up this straight line thing that we got going on here. Looks kind of weird. Okay? Okay, so we've added all these trees in. Okay, this is technically where the glade is, okay? All right. Okay, so the next step now is to go ahead and blend in the stamps. So let's start with these green mountains, or these green hills right here. We're going to go to our textures, B key, F key to open up. Okay, and it looks like it's a bright green texture that we're dealing with here. So let's go use this one. And let's just apply one stroke with the edgy brush. Make sure it's set to FG. I'm just going to see what it looks like. Okay, I kind of like that color. It looks good. Let's drop the opacity quite a bit. And let's go ahead and drop the size, oopsie, down a little bit. Let's go there. Okay. And we're going to start at the base. Okay. You're just going to start with the base of underneath where these stamps meet that texture, okay? And already that green is working quite well. So we'll add another layer on there as well. We just want to make sure that these stamps blend. That's the secret, is kind of getting the stamps to blend properly with your base texture. And you don't always, your base texture doesn't have to immediately be, it doesn't have to work perfectly with the stamp that you're working. It's just the base texture. It's just the texture that's going to be underneath all the other textures, and you're going to want to plot that out. If you don't know, if you don't have a feeling for what base texture to use, when it comes to land, use dirt. Dirt can be your base texture. Use brown, okay? And then from there, you can add your grasses, your other dirts, your other textures, okay? So if you don't know where to start with your base texture, dirt's a good start. You know, obviously there are some exceptions, like a desert, sand, okay? If it's going to be like a archipelago, obviously your base texture is going to be ocean, so pick a water texture, okay? So don't worry at first if you're like putting down your textures and you're like, this looks awful, you know, with these stamps. Don't worry about that. Save that for when the blending comes, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and add in some brown texture to represent dirt, okay? And I'm going to put that underneath here where the base of these very dense trees are at, okay? There's a reason why I want to do that, because in the more denser parts, that's where it's going to be the darkest. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. Let's go all the way up. This part right here should be very, very dark, because this is where the interior of the forest is, where it's the darkest. So you're going to want to make it very dark in where these little cracks are, where you can see some land in the center, because that is dark, is where very little sunlight can reach. So kind of just keep that in mind, okay? All right, we're gonna make it dark in here, dark in here. Okay, just keep adding it in. There you go. All right. So there goes that. So now we're going to go on to the next step, which is we're going to quickly paint our shorelines and then kind of move on to our next one. So let's go ahead and first, I don't really care much for the water texture. I think that's a little too light. Like this texture is kind of light and this texture is kind of light. So let's apply a darker texture and just kind of see how it looks. Okay, you might want to experiment. There's something called contrasting. Contrasting is like where your lights and your darks. Okay, it's a very important artist technique, another thing to understand, a concept to understand. So a great example is on this hill right here. You have these highlights with the contrast, and you have the dark shadow here, and you'll see, like, let's see this base texture here. It's somewhat light, but this texture is also kind of light. So either your FG or your BG, either your water should be bright or dark compared to what your ground texture is. So if your water texture is going to be dark, it kind of helps to have your ground texture be just a little bit lighter, okay? Just kind of keep that in mind. And I'm just going to go ahead and apply it right away to this and just kind of see how it looks. Oopsie, I just realized I'm at 0 opacity, so that is not going to help. Okay, so we've added this kind of other blue texture to it, and I'm also noticing some stuff that I missed. Oopsie, subtract. Move that, okay. Make sure I didn't miss anything, and fix some edges here real quick. Okay, and if you're going to fix your edges, I recommend you use that small brush. Okay. So I'm just going to add a little bit more character in these shorelines real quick. Just a little bit more character. Add a little one here, here. Just adding a little bit more character in here. Okay, my computer's laggy. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay. And let's go ahead and add a little bit more of the shape here. Okay, there we go. We just want to kind of create those natural shapes. Put one here too. Okay, there we go. This is kind of, what I'm doing is I'm subtracting around the hills, so that way it looks like it's a little bit more realistic, okay? All right, let's go ahead and quickly add that last texture right here. Oops, because we missed some. There we go. Okay. And from here, I think that blue looks okay. If it doesn't look good, there's obviously a series of greens that we could use as well. Technically, I would expect it to be kind of green. So let's actually do that. Now that I think about it, let's increase the saturation and go ahead and just apply this real quick. It might be bright. Let's just take a look. Yeah, but that looks much better than that darker blue. Light has a way of retaining the color of the things around it, or water does. So if you have a lot of green trees and stuff, I mean, that water is going to be pretty green, okay? So just kind of keep that bit in mind. All right, and we're going to do some real quick texturing real fast, okay? So we can move on to River Delta. What I'm going to do is just make a darker version of this texture and use that as my dark spots, okay? So if I drop this down, it's going to be darker. You're going to want to make sure your softness is all the way up. Again, don't use your edgy brush. It doesn't generally look good. And don't forget to drop the opacity just a bit, okay? So in these darker areas, okay, we're going to apply the texture, okay? And don't forget around the island, because it's going to be somewhat shallow, okay? Just apply that here, here and there, okay? And if you don't like it, you can change it up. There's all these things that can be done. Let's go ahead and add a stroke there, one there. We'll go back, go with a smaller size, and I'm just going to go like this. Single strokes, just to kind of get rid of the line, because if you look at this, it looks like a line. So we're going to fix that a bit. Drop this down. Just want to see how it looks. Let's go ahead and go up one more. Let's go with 86. Let's do some single clicks. Just going to do it all around this ledge here. Okay, and I just kind of do this to break up the line. You see there's a line here. What I'm doing is breaking up that line. There we go, like that. There we go. Okay, and there's one last bit to do. We're going to make a little bit of shoreline, okay? And we're going to increase the brightness just a bit more. Okay, go full opacity. And again, with your crosshairs, go along this ledge here. And just make sure that it looks good. Does it work right? Okay, let's make it just a little bit brighter, okay? Then we're going to have to save and refresh the page. A little bit brighter, okay. Do that, see how it looks. Oh yeah, much better, okay. So we're kind of adding this, like we did with the Archipelago, adding a little bit of this here. This is kind of your, kind of where the water is most shallow because it meets the land, okay? And we don't have to do it with everything. You can miss a couple spots. Like just do this here and then do that one there. And then you can kind of just do a couple in here. You don't have to do the whole thing if you don't want to. Kind of keep that in mind. Okay, there we go. All right. So you've added that, and there's one last bit. We want to create some shoreline as well. And we're going to go and use this light color here. Let's go with actually kind of an orangish color. Let's go with that one. Let's just see how that looks. Remember to switch to FG. So there's that A and D, or I'm sorry, 1 and B, sorry, or 1 and 2. I'm getting the these two mixed up. So make sure it's set to FG, okay, 1 and a BG2, okay? And we're going to just do one stroke just to see how it looks on the land. Okay, that looks fine. We're going to undo that. We'll go full opacity, and that's fine because it's not too bad. And it's the same thing that we did before, okay? We're going to go ahead and just set this at full opacity, go along this ledge here and make a shore. And I'm just going to match it up with the areas that have that light blue already. So if it has light blue, I'll add that. So it's just kind of a rule that I can use to make it easier. So I'm just only going to add shoreline to where that light blue is on the BG. Okay, that's it. You don't have to add it everywhere unless you want to, you can. But for me, I'm just going to do it like that, okay? All right, there's some here along this ledge. Perfect. And one along here. Okay, perfect. And then another one. Oopsie, I missed a spot right there. And a little bit here. Okay. There you go. All right. All right. I think that looks good. We'll go ahead and call that good. I'm going to save. We'll make sure to do some refreshing. I'll check up on the chat. Make sure everyone's doing good. Sweet. It's a good point, Brian. Ooh, Parchment Regional, Joshua Carver. Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah, let's go ahead and finish that stream next month. Sorry, I had to schedule everything. So, but yes, we'll get that started. Do you take into account where the shadows are placed for water? In the world style, you don't have to. In my mind, world style, no. But if you were doing like a up close regional, then yeah, probably, or battle map. If you're doing battle map, then for sure, you're probably going to want to do that. But in this case, you don't have to. At least not in my opinion. I mean, you can add shadows, but there's already shadows baked into all the stamps. So it's up to you how much detail you want to do. I personally don't do a lot of shadow work with the world style. The maps are big. You don't have to worry about it, in my opinion. But if you're doing a zoomed-in version of something, absolutely, yeah, you could totally factor in where shadows will be in the water. Watch other tutorials that actually show how to create shadows and reflections in the water with battle maps. So look for that, okay? Let's go ahead and refresh the page because we've been doing this for a little while. And we want to make sure that that I don't get some corrupt or old data. So we're going to refresh the page, get that started. and I will, Joshua Carver, go into a tutorial sometime about taking into account where shadows are placed for water, okay? Sweet. All right, we're loading. 2 more. Okay, I'll try to get this done by 1 o'clock. This one took a little longer than expected. Okay, so next is a river delta, okay? And a river delta is specific, okay? A river delta is a part, it starts at the mouth of a river, okay? So the mouth of a river is where a river and the ocean connect to make a confluence. A confluence is just where 2 bodies of water meet each other. Like 2 rivers meet, that's called a confluence, okay? So your river delta is basically where the river meets the ocean, and what happens is that there's not enough strength in the river's flow, and there's a lot of sediment, and it's not enough flow to push all that sediment out to sea. And so what happens are these little islands get created, okay, in a river delta. So first thing, obviously, for a river delta is you just need a river. That's the first step. So we're going to go ahead and use the brush tool. I'm going to use the path tool to show this, but you could make it with the subtract mode of the mask tool, okay? But I'm not going to do that in this one. In this one, I'm just going to use the path tool, but the concept remains the same with the add mode or the subtract tool or the mask tool, okay? So just kind of know that. Okay, so let's go with the full width, and obviously the first thing you're going to want to make is a river, okay? You want to make a river, and you want to make an ocean, okay? I'm actually not going to use a path tool. Let's just use actually the brush tool for this one. And this is a quick one. It's going to be easy, so we'll try to rush it a little bit. So the first thing you're going to want to make is a river, okay? So we're just going to do that by just kind of making our river, okay? So here's our river, and it goes out to the ocean out here, okay? So we'll just put the ocean out here. Okay, nothing fancy. Just kind of want to explain the basics of how a river delta works. Okay, so you have your ocean, and then you have your river. Okay, and this is the mouth right here. This is where the mouth of the river is, okay? Or confluence, if you want to call it that. Another confluence would be like if a river came over here and connected into this. This would be a confluence where these rivers meet, okay? So we'll just undo that. Okay. So with a river delta, as I said, there's just so much sediment and not enough water flow strength to remove that sediment out into the ocean. And instead, that sediment builds up and eventually creates little islands, right? So basically, it looks like this. You're going to see some little islands here. You'll see an island here going out to here. It's not strong enough. And there's just too much sediment. So you kind of create these little branches like this. And you can do this with the add mode of the mask tool, the subtract mode of the mask tool, with a brush, or with the path tool. Up to you, okay? However method you want to go about it. Okay, I'm just going to go with the brush tool. All right? And these are little islands that were created from sediment that's built up. Okay, that's basically what this is. It's just sediment that was not able to go out to sea, and so it collected and created these little islands. This is called a river delta, okay? And if you feel like you want a little bit more islands, you can throw another one in. That's fine. You can add it in, add one here if you want. It's just up to you how you want to go about it. But that's all that a river delta is. It's just that sediment problem, and it creates these little islands, okay? So that's really as simple as a river delta really gets, okay? It's not really that complicated, pretty simple stuff, okay? And again, this is just with the brush tool. If you were to do it with the path tool, it's the same thing. Honestly, I don't recommend making your ocean with the path tool. That's going to be huge. Just use the subtract mode of the mask tool to make your ocean. The default layer for when you open up a new map is the BG background layer, okay? So obviously, if you're wanting to create a landmass, use the add mode of the mask tool. You've already got your ocean. That's fine with the subtract mode. The path tool is only for when you're making your river and your river delta. Don't even bother trying to make an ocean with it. Even a lake can be kind of difficult. If you're using the hue if you're using the hue blend mode for your river, don't worry. The texture or the color of the path will blend in with the ocean color or lake color. Okay, so just if you're making a river delta, you only need to use the path tool, or make the river part with the path tool and not the ocean, okay? Because that would be a total pain in the rear. You really don't want to do that, okay? So, but anyway, this is the basic concept, okay? And the concept remains the same, right? With the path tool, you make a little path. This is where your river delta is, okay? It's really as simple as that. I'll quickly just add in some minor details real quick in here just to kind of give it some, make it look nice, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the last one. So I'm just going to create a little shoreline here, okay? And it's okay to make these a little, because this is your sediment, so we'll add that here. Okay, just so it looks nice. Okay. All right, and a little quickly a darker texture just to fade in, and then we'll call it good. For that one, I'll move on to the Arctic. Sweet. Ooh, thanks, guys. This is a long one. Appreciate your patience. Okay, just to get some darker water in here. Okay. Perfect. There you go. Sweet. Okay. All right. And as always, if you're doing your river, do all the overlapping hills, trees, mountains, whatever, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. Always, always overlap. Just like we saw here, right? Overlap, overlap, overlap. Absolutely important for creating depth. Otherwise, it just looks really weird when all the stamps aren't overlapping things. So it's super important. Let's add in the last one. Just want to make sure I'm on the right layer. I think it's FG. Okay. And we're going to go into the catalog, F key. We're going to pick snow. You can go click snow right here. You'll see there's a whole bunch of options. So we'll click it, go into here, press enter. Oopsie, at the right opacity. Okay, so your base texture obviously is an Arctic. Couple options that we can go with here. We can kind of create this super cool kind of section where how you would make shattered ice. So I'll show you how to do that. That technique is very similar to the Archipelago. Okay, so we're already set to FG. So let's go ahead and take our BG, and you're going to want to take the edgy brush, turn off your smooth. Okay, you don't want smooth anymore. You can get rid of that. That's fine. So let's click that and get rid of it. If it will let me, which it doesn't seem it will. Okay, well, I'm probably going to have to save. I'm pretty sure that it's just getting a little corrupted, so I'll have to refresh. Oops. All right, sweet. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and refresh the page. For some reason, that smooth option didn't work. I'm just going to assume that something went wrong. So we're going to give it a second to log in. My bad, there we go. Okay. 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 Open it back up. Sorry for the wait there. Thanks for bearing with. Okay. Just give it a moment to load. It's going to be a little bit slower to load now because we've added all this stuff to it. Okay, last one. Sweet. Don't forget, there's going to be a video that I have scheduled to upload tomorrow at 10 a.m. PDT, okay? All right? And that's going to be basically how to upload custom assets. That's both textures and stamps, okay? It's going to show you how to use them, how to do that, and also super cool little nifto trick in there as well. It's how to use how to take a hand-drawn map or an image and use it as a background image that you can trace over with the mask tool, okay? And that's a common question that I've seen, so I've incorporated that into the video so that you guys understand how to use an image guide as a background to trace over. And remember, make sure it's an image that you've kind of created, and if you're going to sell it, make sure that you mention the image that you use as a guide. It's just being polite to the original creator of that, okay? If you just hand drew it yourself, that's great, okay? But always recognize that if you're going to use reference images or trace over an image as a guide for your map, make sure that you mention the original creator. That's just being polite, okay? All right. Let's go ahead and do the Arctic, and we're going to try this again. The smooth seems to work. I'm going to just move it real quick and just kind of see what it looks like when I add it. Okay, cool. It does kind of create that break look that I like. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a coastline that's made of a bunch of cracked ice everywhere. Okay, super cool idea. I'll show you how to work that out. Let's go ahead and change our texture here for that BG layer. Let's go with something with like maybe some ice. I'm not sure. Let's take a look what might work well for that. There's snow, but is there ice? Aha, there's some ice textures here. That's perfect. Let's go ahead and pick a ocean texture that we want first. Let's go with a dark texture that's going to go well with that white. So let's go with maybe this one right here for the BG. Okay, there we go. All right, sweet. Oopsie. And also remove softness so that way it goes much quicker. There we go. Okay. And we're going to want to pick some different stuff with this cracked ice. Oh, perfect. That's great. Okay. Let's go ahead and first make our cracked ice part. And so you're going to go ahead and drop this down to 3, subtract, and take it down to 1 size. And it's just like we did with that archipelago up here. We basically just kind of did this thing where we went like this. Okay. So what you're doing is creating shattered ice. Okay. And you're just doing your first pass. Okay. There's your first pass. Okay. And then the next step that you can do is obviously switch over to your subtract 1 size. And if you want, you can add in some extra details by just adding in some cracks like this. That's up to you if you want to do that or not. You don't have to. I'll just do it to a couple, just kind of show you what I mean. Okay. This is basically like a crack. Okay. Now, if you don't want to do that, if you prefer to do something different, you can use textures instead. So let's go ahead and just restore. We'll get rid of all that stuff. Okay. So you have this nice cracked ice here. You can also use textures to accomplish what you want. Okay. So we've got this cracked ice. I'm pretty sure I saw it right here. Perfect. And instead, we're going to go to settings and we're going to change things up a bit. We're going to go to brightness to where it's black, so it's dark. Okay. We're going to increase the size under placement. Nice big cracks. There we go. Perfect. Okay. And maybe even contrast to make it darker, hopefully. There we go. Sweet. Switch to your FG layer. 1 key. Go over to your edgy brush. Actually, let's go with soft instead. Go with your circle brush. Softness all the way up. 100% opacity. And again, just around the shoreline on the inside, you're going to go like this. And you're just going to apply that cracked texture like this, okay, around. So it looks like it's got cracked like that. And the first pass may not be enough. So with these alpha textures, every time you apply another stroke to it, it's going to get darker. So notice that as I apply it again, you'll notice that the cracks get darker. So if it's just not dark enough for you, just apply it again. Okay, keep that in mind. All right, sweet. I'm going to make this nice. And don't be afraid to go out a little bit away from it. That's fine too. Okay. Yeah, this nice cracked brown, sweet. And then you can turn around and just use that texture again. You can go up into the catalog, open up cracked ice. Here we go again. And this time switch to BG, 2 key. Okay. And this time we can use the edgy brush this time. Let's drop the opacity down as always. Okay. And we're going to go on the outside. Okay. So you go like this. Okay. And you're going to notice that cracked texture again. And let's actually increase the opacity so that it obviously doesn't work that well that way. Let's go full opacity to see how that looks. And we're going to add that cracked texture again. Okay. To these edges here. There's a little bit of blue, brown there. I screwed up. Okay. But you're going to add that cracked just around these edges here. Okay. Just so it kind of looks like it's cracked that way in the water as well. Oopsie, I just noticed some texture there that didn't work out well. Let's fix that. Okay. All right. So now you have some cracked ice there, which looks kind of nice. Okay. So you got your cracked ice. You got the water worked out well, and we can add in some. Let's add in some hills probably, and some stamps. So we'll go into the catalog, there's O key, F key, and there should be some snow hills, some snow trees, even some snow mountains. Let's go ahead and apply some of these nice little snow mountains medium here. I kind of like these. Okay, and we're going to add just one mountain range. Okay, and actually I think I'm going to have them branch out. So we'll add one here. Okay, and then we'll go out like this. Okay, and then we'll add in another one, add in a couple branches going out here, one here, here, here. Okay, and if you feel like these mountains don't work well, again, there's tons of options. That's the beauty of this tool, is that we have this HSBC advanced options, and they work just so good to kind of create some things that you want. Like if you're just not happy with the way it looks, there's so many options. You can go to select all from the set, so they're all selected. Okay, advanced settings, you can go to contrast, and you can drop the contrast if you want. You can increase the brightness if you want. There's so many different options. We can change the saturation completely, or we can change the blend mode as well to where you want it to be luminosity, and you can do that. And you can increase the brightness if you want. So there's a lot of options. We're going to go with that, and we're obviously going to have to pick a somewhat of a darker texture to where these blend in, because you have these dark spots in here, and that looks kind of weird. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a texture that we want, that we like, that has some interesting artifacts in it. This Ice 10 has some of these nice artifacts in it. And what we're going to do is instead we're going to drop the saturation all the way to 0. Okay. And we're going to look at the size, make sure it looks good. And we're also going to just use our edgy brush, or our circle shape. We're going to increase the softness, drop the opacity, and just real quickly do a single pass. FG layer, sorry. Do a little pass. Okay, so a little too much at 70%. Undo. Let's go even lower. Okay. Let's go with 40%. Just kind of see how that looks. We're going to apply. Okay. I think it can go up even more. Let's just keep going. Sometimes it's not hard to find that sweet spot. Okay, there we go. I think that's okay. That should do. Just going to put it over, and if it doesn't look good, that's okay. We can always change things up. Right here, we're just trying to blend in these stamps with this. Okay. Okay, and we're also going to go ahead and change up the size, and just going to do some single clicks. It's just my technique. Okay, some single clicks. Single clicks, to me, again, it's just that transition that I really like. That I really like transition. Okay, and then we're going to add one more texture, and we're going to do some snow. I think this bright snow here. I'm going to do one stroke just to see how bright it is. Not too bad. Okay. That last bit is we want to create some. I want a little bit more blue where the ice is, so I'm just going to go on the FG, and just on these edges here, I'm going to apply that bluish ice texture just to the edges here. Okay, that's where the ice is, and do another pass too. We want to get a little bit of blue in there. Okay, and you might want to consider doing the same thing to the BG as well. Just that final piece to kind of add in some nice transition, because it's this light blue against this dark blue, so that looks really kind of stressful on the eye. So the way to fix that is just to switch over to BG. The opacity will be fine, and just a real quick pass right in here like this, and there you go. Okay, so that is basically going to be it right there. That looks good to me. I'm going to save and call it good. I appreciate everyone being involved in the stream. Thank you guys so much. Absolutely, really enjoyed working on this. I appreciate you guys' patience with that trouble that we had earlier for those who were here for the beginning. Okay. All right. I will make sure to finish this up off screen and then I'll go ahead and add it to my profile, and people can go ahead and apply it. And in the future, just so you guys remember, future videos, future streams next month, more than likely I'm going to take every single one of these panels and put in some actual structures. So it's basically going to be adding settlements to all these. That includes the battle map ones I've made, the parchment ones I've made. All of them, we're going to add settlements to all of it. Okay, so that's going to be for future videos, as well as a video I'd like to cover, or a stream I'd like to cover, on how to use the filter tool. I don't see a lot of people using the filter tool, and it's absolutely critical to creating various styles and to making your maps really pop. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. So thank you again, everyone, for making it, and I will see you guys next week, same time, 10 a.m. PDT, Wednesday, for the next terrain stream. Thank you again for watching. Don't forget to click the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget to click the alert button if you want to see more videos. Don't forget, we have our schedule up. Go to my profile to see what that schedule is. And also, we might be soon introducing guest cartographers, people from our EA group, to kind of come in and be guest streamers. So look forward to that as well. So thank you again for watching. Check for this video, and merry map making, everybody.